G'day, H. Mahara here. I just got one other thing to do here. I thought I was ready. Gotta always do an audio backup because you never know with YouTube these days. YouTube seems to be overtaxed. So yeah, tonight I was thinking of I'm not well. What I'm going to talk about is that people with BPD, that's to say borderlines, right? They're not empaths. I've already done a video called The Myth of the Borderline Empath. So, highly sensitive people might fit, but then not all highly sensitive people have borderline personality. So, anyways, this idea that borderline people with borderline personality are empaths, no, this empath narrative is out of control all over the place. I want to talk about that, as well as that people with BPD make choices all the time, and they're responsible for every single choice, every single reaction, action, word, etc. Problem being, often they're not consciously aware of that. But guess what? Last thing I would ever be. I have empathy for people with BPD, but I am not a BPD apologist. So what's up with YouTubers saying, but they can't help it? If you think if you're going to help yourself, you got to know they can't help it. They didn't mean to do it. Well, it varies. It really varies across different people with BPD. And if they're diagnosed or undiagnosed, diagnosed untreated, a little bit of treatment, not much treatment, might not make any difference until really substantially pretty much treated too, like recovery treated. So through DBT, they can gain more awareness. I don't want to be saying everything here I've said before, but the point of this live stream, and people feel free to chime in with what you think. Um, yeah, Clover, thank you, because I think you have BPD or something, right? But Clover Sales said everyone's a friggin' empath. No kidding, and I'm just passionate, people, because this idea that codependents are empaths, that people have been hurt by narcissists are empaths, that people with BPD are empaths. It's like, okay, wait a minute. Is there somebody out there on YouTube who said a narcissist could be an empath? Like, where's this going? And what does this mean? And yeah, I was looking for a certain book yesterday that I just wanted to get the Kindle thing, and I was purchasing it. And as I was doing that, or looking for it rather, on Amazon, of course, where else? Yuck. Um, I went by so many books like highly sensitive this, empath that, empath sensitivity, empath whatever. It's like it is inculcated, it is like it's invaded culture. It has taken over common sense. And this idea, this empath narrative, has taken over all logic and reason, in my humble opinion. Okay? So, empath to me means what? It means people are invoking a special kind of like, I really got hurt, capital V word status. I don't think they mean to be, but like, are empaths responsible for anything? Not not what a cluster B might do, but like, are they responsible for their own feelings? Are they responsible for getting out? I don't mean to, hey, I better like modulate my tone because I don't want to insult anybody. Because a lot of people identify with this, but they identify with it because it's rampant all over the place. It doesn't make it a helpful narrative at all. What we all need to strive for, what I believe I have, is healthy empathy. Healthy empathy is a wonderful thing. It's necessary for human relating in reasonably healthy and respectful ways, and even across differences, for crying out loud, right? So I take issue with the empath narrative all over the place, every which way. And the idea that people with BPD aren't, well, they don't know what they're doing, so they're not responsible for their behavior. I don't know what's going on in this world. But I'm here to say, and firmly say, with no disrespect to people with BPD, but we can't coddle people. This is something that's getting huge in culture and huge, not just with people with BPD, But, I work with a lot of clients. They have a lot of tough decisions to make about somebody with BPD in their life. And it might be a parent. It's not always a partner or an ex-partner. It might be that. It might be a parent. It might be a relative. It could be someone in the family. People are burnt out, exhausted. People with a severe impact with BPD, untreated, treatment resistant, whatever the case, who often don't want to stay here and then kind of like make many attempts to not be here anymore. Well, you know, that's awful. Nobody wants to see that happen to anybody. But you know what the hard cold facts are? Just logically speaking here, with I hope some empathy at the same time. We cannot, not one of us can take responsibility for somebody else's life. Not one of us can walk in, we can have empathy and walk in the other person's shoes to understand they're in a lot of pain, to understand they're really hurting. But we can't rescue them. We can't fix them and we can't change them. And even when that means they're at the brink, a lot of people who are going no contact from people with BPD in their lives in all different relationship types have in many cases are very concerned about that person literally surviving, and that's really really understandable. And of course I care greatly about that, and too many people with BPD don't survive, right? And it's a tragedy. But I can't stop someone with BPD, as I know, because I had an ex why BPD took her life. I couldn't stop her. I can't stop the next person. I can't stop a client. If that's what they're really going to do, you do everything you can, right? But so this idea of and then people with, okay, I'm going to jump around here on this one, but people with BPD online, on YouTube, writing all over the place. I'm borderline. I'm an empath. You know how empathic we are. Next thing you know, what are they actually doing? What's happening for them in their world? They're so empathic and everything like that. And then the next thing you know, wait for it, here it comes. I'm just waiting on a video clip here. I didn't time that well. So yeah, they say they're so sensitive, and there it is. They're so sensitive and they so care about other people's feelings. They don't have any reference for how you feel. They don't have any reference for how the other person feels. What they care about is like the lady in this video, whatever has got her going, and she's a yelling her head off. Do you think that she's having empathy or thinking about anybody but herself? And people with BPD aren't always like this, and they don't all, react or act this way. But, and I don't know, this is a video clip, but let's say this woman has BPD. Well, whatever, triggers her, gets her so angry, she's making an active choice there to yell and scream. It might be subconscious, it might not be, it could be part. But I'll say one thing: as somebody who had BPD and fully recovered, like 30 years ago, point being, there is no excuse for this. And there was a time in my life when I didn't know, quote, better, but it doesn't absolve, it doesn't change anything. And so people out there are like, let's coddle them. Or people with BPD are like, I want to be, without saying this word, coddle us, validate us, but we hurt so much. Oh, people say to me, how, and I don't mean to be like, I'm not mocking, I'm just, they'll go, oh, how could you use the word borderline in a title? It's like, oh my God, what are you so sensitive about? And yes, it's stigmatized and it's horrible. But the point is, how quickly, well, not quickly enough, but how quickly I would learn in therapy many years ago. And I didn't like the lesson, okay, that I was making choices. And I actually got myself into quite a bit of trouble with the person who kind of told me this. And I'm like, I'm not making choices. What are you talking about? Blah, 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 blah. Well, yeah, because I know BPD from the inside out. I can guarantee you they're making choices. And a lot of people aren't aware of all the choices. They don't have a clue how it affects you, but they're not to be let off the hook or let it go or say, well, poor them, and you got to just go no contact, or poor them, and like, in order to heal, you have to think something different of them, or they're all just 2-year-old children and all this kind of nonsense. No, they're responsible for what they're doing and whether they know what they're doing or not. And I can't underscore that enough. And so, how in the world, when in a heartbeat, like the woman in the video, and the next one coming up, there she is, when they can get to this place, how in the world can this be innocent or coddle worthy or they're being empaths? So they think in between these tantrum episodes that they are empaths. Do you know who they feel for? Nobody but themselves. Now, not everybody with BPD is in the same place, but they don't even have self reference, they don't have other reference. So, this idea that people with BPD are really empaths and oh, they're feeling for you, not at all. They're feeling and thinking about themselves almost freaking constantly until and unless a lot of significant treatment. And that is not a really good way to put it because a lot of people have had 5 years of therapy or 3 years or 6 years or whatever, couple of years of DBT, and they might manage things a lot better. But then what happens when they don't? And empathy is something that most people with BPD have the capacity for sure, but not like empaths. They're extremely sensitive. A lot of people with BPD have no emotional skin, kind of sensitive. But that doesn't mean they're as sensitive to other people as they're trying, and sometimes they're not so kind to themselves either. So I don't know what other people think, but these narratives online are just helping nobody. And what they're really doing is supporting the rampant enabling that is happening all over the planet with people who have someone with BP in their lives. This idea that they must be rescued, they must be fixed. And then, of course, it lands on parents. And sometimes people with BP are in the 25%, and it's not the same as the 75%. And parents can become, with all due respect, some of the worst enablers on earth. But what are you going to do, right? You got an adult child with BPD and they're acting out, and maybe their life is really in danger by their own hands. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And the reality is, on the other side of somebody with BPD who just is treatment resistant and won't get treatment, hasn't had enough treatment, whatever you want to call it, they make choices all the time, whether conscious or unconscious, choices that they are responsible for all flippin' day long. And they are not empaths. I don't think anybody's an empath. I don't know who's an empath. Who's an empath? So, this is what I wanted to strongly assert because I think this is the healthiest way to put this out there in a narrative that people with BPD need to learn. Some people need to learn this still. Some people may know this. Some people might intellectually know this with BPD, but not be able to make any emotional changes in their life, right? But I see all over the internet, and no offense to any of those people with BPD, but this idea, you talk about self focus and it's protection driven, right? But when they say, oh, but we hurt so much, don't you get it? Just validate us, validate us. Don't hurt us, we hurt so much already. Like, and I'm an empath. Well, it's not logical sound thinking at all, is it? It's a whole bunch of overfeeling. Hi there, Rob. Hi, AJ. I've even heard a recent interview. Oh yes, with that guy. He doesn't get mentioned here much, does he, Backman? Recently, and he even said identifying one as an empath is narcissistic. Well, I'm not sure if it's all that all the time, Rob, but Backman thinks everything's narcissistic at the end of the day. But he said it's almost as if they are so special to attract an NPD. Well, in a way, I do see a lot of people, when they've been hurt by somebody with NPD or BPD, invoking this empath narrative as a quote special status of kind of hurt and wounded. Yeah. So, but whether or not that's, for some people that could be narcissistic, but it's certainly self-absorbed, so I don't know if I would agree with him that it's I agree with the idea that it's, they think they're special in some way, which they might not realize. But I don't know if everybody who gets into that narrative is narcissistic. So, anyway, some people are listening but not like saying anything. I like to know if, like to know what other people think. Because, this will be controversial. A lot of people won't like this. So, by the way, thumbs up if you're listening and if you, are inclined to thumbs up. And just a caveat again that live streams on YouTube take at least almost 24 hours to fully process more often than not. So be patient when this one is over and when it, I don't know how people find it in the meantime because I have to go to the email and click on that or go to the Creator Studio and click on it and because they take forever to process. Anyway, I thought it was really important to to talk about this, which I hope some more people might have some things to say. But I thought it was really important for me to talk about it because I'm somebody who had BPD and fully recovered. And I look back in my life and I remember the point at which I learned that I was making choices. And sometimes, because I would experience dissociation at times. And it's like, so at some points in time, I kind of maybe almost knew I was choosing something. But maybe I didn't fully know that, or maybe I just didn't take it the next step further. But then, in therapy and even before it was, I didn't actually, I learned this in therapy, yes, solidified it in therapy a long time ago. But it wasn't a therapist who first rather confronted me. I can't remember what the circumstance was now, it was so long ago. But it was actually a minister in a church that I went to. And I don't remember what we were talking about or what maybe I had offended him some way or done something. And he was trying to explain to me how I made a choice to do whatever. And I didn't want to hear him at all. Like, I couldn't fathom it. And yet, that was the beginning of my coming to know. That was like probably in the late 70s, beginning of my coming to understand this. And so, as I do understand BPD from the inside out, I'm not saying everybody with BPD today is like I was, because I was very atypical actually. I didn't have a lot of the symptomology or even all the traits of BPD. But I'm not going to do revisionist history now, but I am going to say I certainly had a lot of what most people with BPD do have going on, although I did have comorbidity or co-occurring conditions. So I'm not basing everything that I say here on only my experience because everybody's different. But I do know that people with BPD are not empaths, and I do know that people with BPD have a capacity for empathy, and I also know that whether consciously or unconsciously, but some or subconsciously, but sometimes kind of sort of knowing, but maybe kind of just not being real honest or able to be honest with that sort of lack of self, people with BPD are making so many choices. And I saw something somewhere recently, and actually, a client said this to me too. Let's take the example of somebody with BPD, they get in trouble with the law. Okay, so nobody's going to argue they have dysregulated emotion, they have all kinds of things going on, they have impulsive, impulse control issues, all of that. Okay, then they get themselves in trouble, and then they have to go to court. Well, what if they have to go to court, but they stand there and they control themselves absolutely fine under all that stress? You telling me that that's not a choice? Edith, BPD episodes are simply symptoms of narcissistic abuse. Well, for many people, it's not just symptoms of, but yes, it goes to the trauma, right? BPD, I believe, is a trauma response. And in my own history, I grew up in a narcissistic dysfunctional family of origin. And so, why I got labeled with BPD and what that means, and I stand by that I fully had three BPD traits extremely much, but that's bigger explanation for another time with new information that's come out. And I don't want to do revisionist history. Yes, it is often because a person with BPD in the 75% had a narcissistic parent or was narcissistically abused, without a doubt. And you said they are fed upon by narcissists. Um, well, so is everybody else. I mean, if you've been through narcissistic abuse, you're the adult child. I mean, you were the child, now adult child of a narcissist. Whether someone has BPD or not, everybody's going to get fed on by a narcissist. if they don't have proper, boundaries and get help and stuff. And you said it's an adaptive thing. Yeah, well, and it's a very defensive thing as well. Like it is defense and it is about surviving. I fully well acknowledge that. But in the fact of how people can behave, they're still responsible and they're still making choices. And then you said people pretend to care, understand, but they don't. Nobody is special. Well, that's true. I mean, because there isn't anybody with BPD over anybody else that's more special. And just because I recovered, I don't think I'm more special. And so yeah, and I just don't think that the empath narrative serves anybody. But yeah, I fully well acknowledge that BPD is a trauma response. And a lot of people with BPD have a narcissist, in the 75% have a narcissistic parent or a BPD parent, or like I had a BPD NPD comorbid mother with a dark triad father. Serious trauma happens in people's lives. And here's the thing that is not fair, right? Nobody asks to have BPD. Nobody asks to have a traumatic childhood. And that's horrific. And it shouldn't happen to anybody. And then the defenses that have to be put in place that are, to survive that become super maladaptive in adulthood. And then what happens is people with BPD need to go and get the therapy and the treatment and do the deeper work and find self and heal all of that woundedness. And there's nothing fair about that. When you're a child, you get totally abused. 75% of people with BPD, lots of abuse history. That's my story too. That's not story, but my reality. That's my childhood. And the thing is, though, once we become adults, it's all of a sudden our responsibility. And there's nothing fair about that. Because a lot of people with BPD get stuck right there. Well, I didn't do this to myself. I didn't ask for this. Well, it's not my fault. And all that's true. But then it becomes people's responsibility. Clover Sale, why do I fall apart when someone doesn't like me to the point where I can't think? Well, it's probably because you're very sensitive, and people who've been abused are really sensitive. And you shared that you have BPD, and you shared you think you might have some narcissistic traits. Well, you don't know who you are, Clover, and so this goes back. It's a trigger back to what you experienced in your childhood. So when someone doesn't like you, because I don't know, but I'm just gonna I shouldn't guess, but I'm going to say maybe one of your parents were, not very friendly to you more often than not, or worse. And so that is likely why, because you're getting triggered back to something, and it's very hard to not feel very wounded by that, and to not, it's understandable to feel very wounded by that because you don't know who you are. Edith, you're right. Stop these labels. Well, it's true. I'm not. You know what? I have to use them on YouTube so people can find me. I abhor the labels. I am sick and tired of the labels. I believe in and practice humanistic psychology. I work with clients in a human-based context. Rogerian, Carl Rogers, client-centered therapy. I believe in extending respect and care and empathy even when sometimes clients are screaming at me because they get triggered, and it's not I didn't do anything, but I represent the parent in the transference and stuff. But and I have people that will come to me now lately, the last year or two or so. They probably have whatever BPD. It's a trauma response, right? So, and they'll say, but I don't have BPD, even if they might say they were diagnosed with it. And then 10 minutes later, they'll go, no, I don't have BPD. I have CPTSD. And I'm like, whatever you want to call it is fine with me. Because at the end of the day, people with codependency, to a lesser degree, they have some adverse childhood experience. So it might be trauma, it might not rise quite to trauma, but it's very hurtful. And that's the genesis of codependency as we now understand it. Not all the blah, blah, blah that used to be about people who are addicted to alcohol and people who are addicted. It's different now. It's relationally different. And we understand more about the root causes of that. But codependency remains a kind of really charged and disagreed upon in all kinds of ways and places, quote, label. Yes, because these labels, even with psychiatry, as much as I can't stand their pseudoscience and their narrative, and you know what? I have a new way of putting it. Psychiatrists, maybe not all, But psychiatry, the profession, and psychiatrists work in glass houses and throw their stones out at the people they're supposed to help, right? With all this pathologizing of humanity. Oh, I've had it with psychiatry and psychiatry. And I'd had it when I was on my recovery journey. Whenever I got near a psychiatrist, it didn't last long because, wow, they were emotionally blackmailing. They were threatening to shove me into this institution. If I didn't take this pill, I'll put you. And I was just like middle finger all the way. It's like, I dare you. You can't. I'm not. And they never did, and they never could, and I wouldn't take the flipping pills. So anyway, I get both sides of this really from the inside out. And the labels are horrific. And what I was going to say about that was the labels were truly, I don't know about psychiatry anymore. I mean, I'm sure there's some great psychiatrists out there, people that are nice people and then they turn into psychiatrists by day. I don't know. But there's a lot out there. I don't see it as being a profession with morality or ethics. I'm sure they have some. But with all this pushing of the psych meds, nah, and the studies that they can't prove, but they'll keep on claiming their ideology is evidentiary science. Anyways, I better not get going off on that. I can do that for quite a while. The labels were intended, okay, can you believe this? Apparently, so the story goes. For people that are more, I like to think I'm one of them, humanistic in working with people. The labels were only supposed to be in the chart and kind of like a landscape of kind of what's happening for this person, and then look at the person as an individual. And then we have social media and everything's blowing up and all these books, and so we have to use these stupid words. And I agree 100% with you because I don't like using the words. I find it really abhorrent, but I have to use the words because if I titled this in some other manner, nobody would find it. And you said everybody is narcissistic and empathic to different degrees. Well, I think that's a slippery slope because I don't really agree with that statement. I think it's too broad stroked a statement. Some people have empathy. Narcissists particularly don't. Psychopaths absolutely don't. But not everybody is narcissistic. Can people get a little self-centered, self-absorbed, self-occupied? Can people be rude? Can they be a-holes? Can they not care about somebody's feelings? All of that, but it doesn't make everybody diagnosable or narcissistic. I think that's partly what's gone so crazy in our world and culture today. Is everybody, as soon as something happens, well, it's a narcissist, but then sometimes, hey, it is a narcissist. You know what I mean? And then Edith, you said to Cloversill, we were conditioned to people please, follow the rules, and mirror behavior that we were taught was appropriate. That's so true in many people's cases, and who get diagnosed with BPD, and what it really means versus what psychiatry says it means. And I would just say that I was a little bit the opposite of what you're expressing there, Edith, because I guess I was somewhat, following quote rules to a certain age, like till I was about 8 or 9. Um, but I refused to mirror their behavior. I rebelled. So it can go either way. People can very much mirror the behavior. Very much you lose yourself either way to it. And but I went the rebellious way, and I fought every step of the way. Not that helped me a whole lot. Tammy, what would you call it then when someone grows up in a toxic situation and in order to survive have to become so in tune to what everyone else feels? That is hypervigilance. That's what I would call that. It is hypervigilance that is situationally driven, that people, especially as children, or even if you were an adult right now, like somebody with codependency, or like who's not got a quote, I don't even like these words, personalities, or a quote personalities, or unquote. So for people who are non at all the labels, right? Which then they tend to get the label codependency. Um, it's hypervigilance. It's protective. It's about survival. And believe me, I was extremely hypervigilant, especially, well, to both my parents, but especially to my father. Like, I would listen when I'd know about what time he was coming home from work, and I would actively be wanting to know how hard were his shoes hitting the floor because it would tell me like how bad it was going to be at that moment. Like I was even attuned to how heavy was his walk at a given moment. But so what that is, it's not being an empath, it's being hyper vigilantly protective of oneself because you have to be to survive. And or well, it's survival and it's trying to emotionally survive the pain and the agony of it all. Clover Sale, I wish I knew how to quote fix, unquote that, Edith. Well, yes, and that's what happens in therapy, Clover Sale. Really, that's the goal of therapy. You don't fix it, you heal it. You unlearn what you learned in childhood, find yourself, and learn new skills. And that's the sort of quote growing up process that people with BPD, well, or the label BPD, get cheated out of, right? Because of all the damage done. Tammy, to the point that they can walk into a room and get overwhelmed with the emotional states of everyone in the room. Yes, but this is actually more projective than most people think. I mean, I think more, but the term empath, as far as I understand it, so don't quote me because I might not be perfectly, I'm not right about everything, came from Sandra L. Brown's work, which was specific, at least before, specifically to women that, as Sandra L. Brown said, were in relationships with sociopaths, whatever that means, because they're all psychopaths. It's called antisocial personality disorder, which that's not even a personality disorder. It's beyond that. So you get it. You get people get that overwhelmed with an emotion with emotional states because there's triggers in every room, depending who's in the room. Or even if you walk into a room that might be that might be differently triggering, or you walk into a room with somebody that you don't think's going to hurt you, it becomes trigger, emotional dysregulation, dissociation, sometimes age regression. It's the past of people with BPD flying into the here and now, and so I don't believe that that's anything to do with empathy. I think people with BPD have empathy, but I don't think it's anything to do with being an empath. It's about your past coming up in the here and now, and it's terrifying because when that happens to a lot of people with BPD, they don't have the awareness yet that that's what's happening, and then it seems like your emotional state and what's happening to you and what you're feeling. Well, and I don't mean just you, Tammy. You, in the general sense, what people with the label BPD then are feeling is either really scared, horrifically emotionally overwhelmed, out of control, all of these things. But it's not really coming from the people in the room, unless they are in fact narcissists and or abusers. And Edith said to Tammy, people tend to steal our identities, change us, thus programmed to be robotic. Well, that kind of speaks to, in the object relations explanation, right, that what happens when infants and toddlers are so traumatized is the arrested emotional development of self. And so that's where self is lost. Identity has been stolen. So it's subsumed by trauma, though. But yes, the person who's the abuser would be the one responsible at that time for that. And so it doesn't just change people, people actually lose the self. And that's what therapy's about too, is finding that self and reconnecting to that self. And so some people can feel robotic. And some people just feel, like Tammy said, super overwhelmed. And Edith said, "You're right. I've had to do the work by myself. I loved your comment about Backman. Well, I mean, he's a genius, yes. And I'm not saying I know everything he knows, but I'm not dumb. And therefore, I listen, and I don't watch many of his videos, but some. Like when he talks about BPD, I get really, like, extremely passionate. Like he's out of his freaking, you gotta remember he's a narcopath. So sometimes he's got some really accurate facts, yes. And sometimes some accurate facts mixed in with some gaslighting, mixed in with some juicy, I'm going to get a lot of people revved up about this video so I can get my supply. And let's face it, he doesn't have altruistic motives. Well, I mean, I'm not saying I do either. I mean, because nobody who's altruistic, but he does not have your anybody's best interest listening to him. He doesn't know how any of us feel. So I would say it would be accurate to say that Bachman has no emotional intelligence whatsoever. Plethora of intellectual intelligence, which some of that is way obviously he had to overcompensate in his own childhood. But my point is, and lots of people out there are intelligent enough to do what I do. If you listen to him, slow it down. Yes, sometimes I have to look up the odd word. There's Swiss cheese holes of word salad in even the most brilliant narcopathic presentation. So he has a lot to say that I think matters. But when he starts talking about anything that would be about how people who've been abused by a narcissist or people with BPD and why they might have BPD or what that really is, he loses the plot right there because he doesn't have an inner emotional landscape from which to draw. So at the end of the day, he reduces everything to being narcissistic, or like people with BP are failed narcissists. That's one of the biggest pieces of crap I ever heard in my life. And when I had BPD, if he'd have called me a failed narcissist, I would have said thank you. Because compared to you, I'd rather be me any day, all day long, even back then. Um, uh, yeah, Edith said to Cloversail, for, forget about fixing yourself, be yourself. Take responsibility and grow. But yeah, often people can't do that by themselves from the beginning, from a vacuum, of not knowing who they are, etc. Um, but you have the power outside your former abuser's grasp. Yes, but most people will need therapy. But yes, but to be empowered, one needs to know themselves first. Um, and Edith, yeah, and life empowers us. I'm also diabetic, parentless, and I'm learning to outgrow all the BS. Well, good for you, Edith. That's fantastic because there is healing and there is empowerment to find, and you can figure out who you are. And most people need therapy for that. But yeah, and you said, Edith, you said you're right. Save us from all the pills, ideals, and suggestions. Also, run from all New Agers too. Oh yes, I agree 100% with that. Because all the New Agers, yeah, they're just like, what would it be like? Some kind of modicum of sanity, or something like what I hope I can bring here is in the middle, and not just me, lots of people. And then there's New Agers on one whack job end of the spectrum, and psychiatry on the other whack job end of the spectrum. And so, the psych meds are just horrific. I mean, read Anatomy of an Epidemic. Anybody that might listen to this back and thinks I'm just blowing in smoke. Read Dr. Peter Bregan's books. He is a psychiatrist who critiques psychiatry like I do, only maybe he knows more than I do. I don't know. But, like, I'm not the only one. I might be one of the only ones on YouTube who says this stuff, like, outrightly, just straightforwardly. But, I mean, I'm not the only one who knows this. And of course, you have to be outside the box of the narratives of even psychology. But I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist. That's not a problem. But I did a live stream once, and I was talking about, there is hegemony between big pharma and psychiatry in America, and it's exported up to Canada, but it's different around the world. And I must start looking at the rest of the world as a model, the ICD manual, which I have a couple copies of, but I got to get ICD 11 because, okay, so I didn't literally throw the DSM 5 in the garbage, but I don't want to look at it. I don't want to reference it. I don't want to hear anything out of it because really it's the pathologizing of humanity. So when I was talking about this in another live stream, and I believe it's still up, but I couldn't tell you which one it is, be in the last maybe 2, 3 weeks, maybe longer. Somebody said, so I said big pharma's earnings every year, right? Because this is what big pharma is about, which prejudices and drives the agenda of psychiatry and these biased pharma funded studies. And they want to do what? Sell their pills. And they don't care what they do to people. I mean, I'm not saying every psychiatrist doesn't care, but at the power top of these things and structures, they don't care. And so I was making a point about this, and I said, Big Pharma, this is a fact, last I checked, it's true. The money they earn every year is second only to the military industrial complex in the US. And I made that statement in another live stream, and somebody came back with a comment that was, I should have thought of it, it was brilliant. They said, but AJ, you do realize that Big Pharma is part of the military industrial complex, don't you? Well, of course it is. And then what's next down that line? Psychiatry. That doesn't mean every psychiatrist, right? Some psychologists are even like, oh God, this whole narrative. And I just had this up close and personal, not in the actual community I live, but like just a little down the highway, and trying to communicate with this person who's a psychiatrist, as far as I know, yeah, associate professor of neuroscience and psychiatry, and I ran into it in real time on Facebook, and then there was some email dialogue we had. And they have other challenges and stuff and whatever ADHD is about, and I know I say things about that aren't popular either. I know people are going through something, obviously, and I've been doing some reading where ADHD might be in fact another trauma response. But what we know about that is initially in the DSM working group for the DSM-3, a psychiatrist that was in that working group before he died, long time ago now, went to Der Spiegel in Germany and told this newspaper that the working group of DSM-3 made up ADD and ADHD. So I'm not sitting here saying, well, it's all made up and it's nothing right now. No, I don't mean that. But that was the genesis of it. For what reason? Because they had the pills ready to go. And I think people, so I experienced this recently, and I don't want to throw this psychiatrist under the bus, but she threw me and all of you and everybody with any interest in anything to do with autistic spectrum disorder, or well, they call them disorders too, autism, BPD, NP, and all these labels. They now think that they can link them together. That's what this 7 minute, her 8 minute claptrap, incoherent, unbelievable Facebook video was about. And so I probably shouldn't say much about this publicly because I don't want to. Well, she threw me and everyone else under the bus, okay? And she didn't seem to have a problem doing that. And then she said a lot of things that were conflicting. And then it got into like, well, she accused me in email of being aggressive. Oh, I love that one. I get accused of it online here too. No, I'm a very strong woman and I am very assertive when I have something to say that I believe in. Doesn't mean everybody has to agree with me. And pseudoscience of psychiatry, it's not settled science. I'm not sitting here saying, so I know all the facts. No, I don't. But I know that they don't either. They can't prove it. So this person actually said to me that I was getting aggressive. And apparently they have ADHD and, they're on the spectrum as well. And I literally said in the email, and I really thought about it. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Your perceptions are your own business, but I'm being assertive here. And I'm experiencing you with mixed messages all over the place. And, I realize you have, and I had made effort to really accommodate a challenge of hers that she expressed to me. And I sent her back something in audio to accommodate whatever difficulty she has with reading. So, but then the person, this psychiatrist, but they're human, I guess, some of them, she answered me back in a rather terse and sort of mixed message, different kind of, I shouldn't say crazy way. And then emailed me again. So I sent her an email back and I just kind of said goodbye at the end of it. Like, I'm done with this. I don't want to go back and forth this nonsense anymore. I could agree to disagree with her, but in all of this, she said two things that stand out to me, or three. But the theme is she's got these disabilities. I'm being aggressive. Well, that's her perception, and she's entitled to her perception, but it's not true. I said I'm an assertive, straightforward communicator, and then I tried to accommodate her, right? And so then she came back with stuff that wasn't that palatable to me in the way she communicated it. So I didn't overreact to it. I responded, cool headed, level headed, factually, and then so I said I'm being assertive, and if you perceive aggression, well, that's your responsibility. I can't. So what I said in that other email was, I'm sorry, but like I can't coddle your feelings. It's not aggressive to say I'm not coddling her feelings. I have empathy for this person, even though I'm pretty ticked at them and I disagree with them, and they've led me around these duplicitous cycles of communication I don't appreciate. And then they played the high horse game on me because they're, an associate professor of neuroscience and psychiatry. So, yeah, that trumps me credential wise. So, Does that mean that everything she says is righter than what I say? Or because I'm a mental health professional, that what I say should necessarily trump what the average person. I don't believe in that bullshit. Let me make that really clear. When I'm here trying to educate people, it's not because I think I know it all, number one. And it comes from a lot of my lived experience. And so it's not even that I don't think I'm all that on any level. But I especially would never invoke what this person invoked with me, which I thought was hilarious. I'm like, oh, now she's going to her high horse of being a psychiatrist. Okay, good. And that's when I pointed out. That's when I can't remember the rest of what I said though. I said, so you are now getting on your high horse in your glass house, throwing stones at me about the studies, because what she said was to defend herself, which, I was being assertive, not aggressive. But the ideology, we were having, like, I said to her in this one, she was like, I don't know, wham me, is what it sounded like to me. And she's the uber more credentialed one, and she's going, wham me. And she's the one that did the video. And I thought that we were going to have in this email, I was sort of like, it was at times more friendly than not, but then she gets all kooky and I'm not sure what's going on. And so I'm kind of wanting to just say something reasonably and then divest myself of it. And then she's into all this, but I can't understand this and I don't. I asked her about doing an interview, right? And like, but we'd have to discuss whether or not we could get like agree to disagree and all that and do an interview because it would get contentious. So here I thought we were communicating rather in an academic debate style of communication, okay? Which is not to be aggressive or offend anyone. It's not even personal. I don't take her stuff personally, but apparently she took what I said personally. Then she gets on her high horse of, well, if you don't even, agree or acknowledge, what did she say? Something like, well, what I'm saying professionally is, it's in the studies, and if you're going to throw out the studies, and I don't have anything to come back with or to, I think she even said protect herself, but defend or like to dialogue, but she didn't put it in a mature way, in my humble opinion. And I'm like, so when I wrote her back, I said to that point, I said, well, you just made my point for me. If she has to hide behind the ideology of pseudoscience, or she feels like I'm being too aggressive or she can't talk to me in an academic debate style, and I'm supposed to coddle her because she's telling me about this problem she has and that problem, I care about that. But at the same time, she's going into the high horse glass house if she's so much better or smarter or more knowledgeable than I am, and I wouldn't do that to somebody, period. And at the same time, she's claiming to be a victim of the ADHD and whatever she is on the autism. I don't know. I have high functioning Asperger's. I don't know. She probably has something else and it's maybe more problematic. I don't know. But the bottom line is, I actually did say in email, I'm not going to coddle you. It's like, to me, it was an academic debate. And it's not personal. So what am I? I don't know this person from Adam who's also trying to insult me, which is fine. But like, that's how defensive she got. And I'm like, wow. So, I mean, if that's how well put together all psychiatrists are, look out, duck. And I would advise people who need help to stay the hell away from psychiatry anyway. Oh, anyways, yes, passionate about that, as people well know. That's just a little bit about what went on, but yeah. Cloversail, it scares me that I'm middle aged and have no self. I'm an empty shell. When I talk to people, I have nothing to say or add. I have no life. It's weird. I'm nobody. Oh, the first one thing I want to say to you, Clover Sales, I hear what you're saying about how you feel and you're scared and you're middle aged and what's happening for you. But please know, even if you're not sure who you matter and you are somebody. But I hear you that you don't know who you are, so you say, quote, I'm nobody, unquote, but that's not true. I just want to say that. You might not know who you are right now, but it doesn't mean that you're, quote, a nobody. I really feel, I don't know if you said you're scared, and I don't know if you're feeling pain because it sounds like that is a very scary place to be in what you're feeling. And I really do feel for you, with that. Edith, I wish I had the middle finger you had described in your youth. But my narcs were physical and verbally manipulative. I would not have gone unscathed. Lucky you. Well, guess what, though, Edith? I didn't go unscathed. I had the shit kicked out of me more times than I could count. I was sexually abused by multiple adults. Um, when my father would come up to me like in my teens, because he was one of the sexual abusers. And after, when I got to time of the month, he stopped that. And the next thing you know, physical violence started to get even worse. And I would learn in therapy why that was, but it came out of the blue to me because my sexual abuse at that point, those memories, they were repressed until I went to therapy. And the thing is, because I had to survive that somehow. And I didn't make that choice. But the thing is, he would just grab me, like pull me down the stairs by my hair, and I wouldn't have done anything. I didn't know what was going on. And or maybe one time I walked away from the dinner table. Yes, I dared to defy him again. But when I was defying his shut up and sit at the table for as long as I tell you to, you're not leaving this table, I told him to F himself. I was 14 and I left. And so, but it wasn't lucky me because I got the consequences. But I didn't care about the consequences. I wasn't going to shut up. As you can tell, I'm still not going to shut up because I still will advocate for others and I still believe what I believe. And so I remember one day I left the table and I was halfway up the stairs, almost the top of the stairs. He came up after me and I had long hair because they made me have long hair. And he grabbed me by the hair and he just threw me down. I went flying backwards all the way down the stairs and then landed on the floor and he's punching and kicking me. And then he picks me up and he throws me face first into the refrigerator. And then after that, because that wouldn't always happen like to that degree, but then he had this other thing. He'd throw me back down on the floor, he'd get on top of me, totally replicating everything to do with sexual abuse, but like without, we had clothes on, but he would bang my head on the floor, cover my nose and mouth, have his knees on my clavicle area, just underneath my collarbones. And then the only reason I survived, I thought I was going to die every single time. But the only reason I survived is because, as weird as he started all this, sometimes it would come out of the ether. He would just drop me and walk away too. And the second he would take, and this is not me saying anything except for this is how I coped, right? The second I could get his hand or he took his hand off my nose and mouth because I couldn't breathe, I would start screaming at him. I would start calling him a son of a bitch and everything you can think of. And it's almost like somehow those words had some, I don't know, effect. I don't think they penetrated. But I just want to make the point that there's no lucky anybody in these scenarios. Whether one is more, held down, controlled, or goes along more, or is more passive, or whether people are like me and more, you know, well, not just reactionary, but I was, yeah, at that point in my life, it wasn't freeze fawn, it was fight response. So it's one of the four responses, that happens in the amygdala. But the only thing I can say about my experience, I'm not trying to say, oh, it's not better than anybody else's, but just to you, when you said lucky me, no, not really. Because we're going to get it whether we're quiet or not, we're going to get it in different ways. But I just needed to, there was something about not losing my voice that mattered to me, and I was just trying to survive. Jeffrey de Clover, I'm so sorry for you. You can still find yourself now. Yes, it's true. It might be difficult, though. Definitely scary. Robert, hey there. I think I was wrong to call my buddy possibly BPD. I didn't want to admit his callousness, um, but put his behavior on his home relationship. I wanted to believe he was just triggered momentarily. No, people don't usually just get triggered. If a person who hasn't had a lot of trauma in their life and get labeled with whatever, gets a little bit triggered momentarily or something, well, they're not going to have that extreme a response because there won't be because it comes out of trauma, that extreme response. Um, yeah, and Edith is saying also to Clover Sale that she's not a nobody. Of course, she's not a nobody, but she feels like a nobody. And you don't have to keep talking to come to life. Most people speak volumes of nothing. Well, that's interesting because, boy, I had to keep talking to survive my childhood, but we're all different. At least in my experience, I'm the minnow in the fish pond. Well, And in many ways, Edith, I was at home too, even though I used my voice. Um, to my parents' brutality, I was certainly not the little fish in the crowd. Um, well, Clover, I think you're awful hard on yourself too, and you're thanking Edith. And excuse me. And then you said I'm just so socially retarded. It's embarrassing. I feel people sneaking away from me because I'm uncomfortable. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Clover, but again, be careful of the word choice that you attribute to yourself, because if you have social difficulty or challenges, it doesn't make you, quote, socially retarded, like you just said. Robert, I have a immunocompromised child in my life, but my buddy has been trying to have me go against the, oh yes, the Pandu, the thing safety, because he thinks it's inconvenient. He got gleeful. I made a safety mistake recently. Well, that's sadistic, actually, Robert, that he did that. And I don't know what's going on in the world. I don't know what the numbers mean. I don't really believe in the whole darn thing. But I think that anybody that is around anybody who's immunocompromised or whatever, yeah. I mean, this is the game they're playing with us, or maybe not. Who knows? Because we're all being gaslit on a mass scale. And I would certainly understand your wanting to be on the safe side. Because I too am like that. I would err on the safe side even if I don't, think there's a reason to do it. But still, they have us all gaslit. We don't know whether we're coming or going on the facts. But the fact that that guy got gleeful, that's sadistic. Jeffrey, being an empath isn't hypervigilance. No, I know, because I was saying what hypervigilance was. An empath could certainly be hypervigilant. However, there is empathy outside of a person's trauma. Yes, definitely, but that doesn't mean the empath label means anything, because I personally don't believe in it. And you have the right to believe you're an empath if that's how you feel. I mean, we can agree to disagree. I'm not here to tell people how they should feel. Not at all. Um, Edith, believe me, I know all about your big pharma. It's not mine. I'm sorry. You said all about big pharma. I don't know where I got the word "your" from. Sorry, my mistake. I'm the proverbial guinea pig, a type 2 diabetic. Well, I'm so sorry to hear that, you have diabetes, and also that you were a proverbial guinea pig, because so many people are, and it does so much damage, and it's unconscionable. And, they, it's like these vaccines are coming out with now. They're protected against lawsuits pretty much when the stuff they give does damage. It's that kind of diabolical in a way. Edith, let's give y'all something to laugh about. I don't know who that person is. Indigo children. They're in the future. Oh, so somebody says something about indigo children. They're the future empaths and enlightened ones. Okay, I don't even know what that means, but it does sound pretty funny to me. Edith, I wish I had your assertiveness. I'd actually be healed. Well, I think that what holds a lot of people back is, and I had times when I had a fawn or freeze response too. I mean, especially obviously as an infant, as a toddler, and sometimes in between. But I mostly had fight flight. But then there would be other times of fawn. And the thing about these responses is that nobody wants to have a fawning response, a fawn or freeze response. But sometimes that's what's needed for survival. And I encountered some of those too. And especially when I was younger than what I was just explaining about. Because it was as I got to be 8 or 9 and beyond, it was like, I'm not having this anymore without saying something about it. But it didn't change anything, right? It was just my way of trying to survive, I guess. And actually, I did get hit a lot more because yeah, had stuff to say, but like wasn't gonna let them shut me down in that way. But I think so. The important thing now for people, when maybe the response to trauma has been more freeze or fawn, is how to break out of the passivity of that. And for some people, it means still finding voice. For some people, it just means finding more self worth and more self esteem. Because the strength is within you. I'm not special in that regard. And people who have been through a lot of trauma tend to really have a well of strength, as well as we, at certain points in life. And me, a few decades ago plus, I mean, I was really, I didn't feel like I was strong at all, right? And I was scared of vulnerability because I was hurting enough already. But so I would just say, think about, Edith, looking at, and if you haven't read Pete Walker's book, CPTSD, or anything else that would familiarize, and you may well be familiar, then look at ways that you can start to change your maybe freeze or fawn response into a more active, assertive response. And that's not easy, but it can be done. And it blocks a lot of people's healing. But I will say, in all, like, to be balanced here, when I was in recovery from BPD and whatever, but okay, let's just go with what happened back then. Um, it would sometimes be very challenging for everybody around me and the therapist, because I was very vocal. I was a very vocal person for sure. And one of the things I had when I had BPD was I was absolutely low functioning, classic acting out, raging. And my mother was it's not a poor me, this narrative, by the way. I'm over it. But I think I cried a lot in the crib and didn't get, what I needed. And so I have strong lungs, and I don't yell or scream anymore because, oh, I hate it. I haven't in ages, but if I raise my voice a little, even people seem to get uber intimidated, and it's like if I went, hey, like sometimes when my dogs will be like, leave it, and that seems to still have intensity that people go like, what? But I don't do that with people. And so the thing is, anyway, that in therapy they had to teach me to unlearn some of that, what was over, well, I don't want to say the word on AI, but was it was too much, right? It was too much. At points there was aggression for sure back then, and so it wasn't just assertiveness. So I had to learn how to unlearn that aggression of defense from years ago in the 80s, and learn assertion. And luckily in the group therapy I was in, they had an assertiveness training group. And I remember sitting there, or just aside, I sat there, and they gave us an inventory about anger. And my response to filling it out, and I don't mean to be funny, could sound funny, but I said to the therapist, like, the group was quiet, we were all filling out the inventories, and I said, this thing is pissing me the F off. It was making me more angry. So what fight having the fight response means is, which goes with flight, it just means you're more aware and you're more demonstrative with your anger, which was also modeled in my family of origin, by the way. Everybody was like that. Everybody was yelling, screaming, throwing. Not every, but my grandmother was like that. There was other relatives that were just. It wasn't just my parents. So what gets modeled the most? Well, for me, when I was a teenager and I would be outside with a friend and I'd be like, "You get over here now because I want to talk to you," and it would be super aggressive, and I didn't know that because I thought it was normal. So that might have been part of, I don't know. I just didn't fawn to all of that yelling and screaming. They modeled that when you hurt, well, I guess I don't know if they felt their feelings, but they modeled to me that if you hurt or you're angry, this is what you do. And then of course in therapy, I had to unlearn all that. And then you said, thanks. Where were you when I was hanging out in high school and college? Your authenticity speaks droves and volumes. Well, thank you for that. Um, and Clover, narcissists have fake lives, and I have no life. Well, I'm really sorry to hear, what you're going through, because but I really would implore you to try to get into therapy. It's scary and it can really hurt, but it can also really help. But it isn't easy. And you said, "Welcome to my childhood," with all that credentials baloney. I know, and I don't know if you're speaking of a parent that had credentials, but like my father, like, oh, nothing in mental health. He was a dark triad monster in a way. But he went, he was good at making money. Yeah, he went out in the world in business. And that was his thing. But to this day, when I say how bad I am at math, I mean I can do what I need to do, and taxes and yeah. But the reason is because I totally shut off in math class because he was the banker. He was the guy in business. He was like anything they were doing, I didn't want anything to do with it. So, um, but yeah, like I hear you on that. And in my childhood with my parents, both of them narcissists with different comorbidities, everybody thought my father was a great guy. You know, even though sometimes from our house in the neighborhood wherever we lived would come my screams of like, get off me, leave me alone, blah, blah. And he'd get up and shut the window, and I'd be, oh, that's going to help. And then there was the times I'd run out of the house because he'd tell me to go to bed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd be like, F you, screw that. And then I'd run, you know, fight, flight. And I'd try to get to the door before he got to me, and usually, and I was a lot quicker then. And usually I would get out the house, and he'd be chasing me down as he couldn't chase me far before he'd poop out. And I'd be screaming at him the whole way, and he'd be screaming at me. And the whole neighborhood acted like none of that ever happened. And my father was just a great guy in their opinion. And like it drives you crazy, doesn't it? Whatever, like in your case, if your parents or a parent had credentials, in my case, it was like these people saw what was going on. And but like, no, they didn't really, right? Everybody just turned a blind eye. And Edith, P.S. There were a lot of indigenous PhDs and degreed people. Absolutely. And without wanting to insult the one that I've had contact with recently anymore, I would just say the person has a lot of issues. And they're not even, I don't know, because I asked a question. Have you ever had or can you debate academically? Because I mean, I'm sure the person is very intelligent in her own right, but she seems rather incapable of a basic. Yeah, I'm not talking full on academic debate like I was just throwing stuff at her, but that I was communicating from an intellectual place of this isn't personal and I don't agree with you said this, you said that. The video is an atrocity that she did, and it's on Facebook, it's not on YouTube. And then she told me a little bit about why. And I'm like, then why does her agency stand behind her? And why is that video still up? Because it is she's she was praising me for my articulation skills, but guess what? She doesn't have them. And so it became a hodgepodge. It was just, and what I still don't want to talk about on this channel, what the whole thing's really about, where it starts, and why I have such a passionate response to what she's doing, which all psychiatry is doing. It's what I predicted. They're now saying they can do it. They want to shove together autism spectrum quote disorders with BPD and NPD. That's what it was about. And I am freaking livid, and it's not personal, but I will remain livid because they have absolutely no proof, and this is their agenda. They want to get BPD and NPD into the hard wiring because perhaps ASPD is and autism is, but they're not the same thing. And this woman did the kookiest video I've ever heard. I have it recorded. I don't know what to do with it one day. I should probably put it up here and just go for it. All the critique that went through my mind as I listened to that. Because, like I tried to express to her calmly, she has just exposed us all to the third rail. And it's already happening on YouTube. And there's all the YouTubers, and I'm not here to besmirch people. I'm not even thinking anybody. But there's all of them out there that are more interested in their numbers, their video views, the clickbait, how many subscribers do they have. Some of them are very responsible. But a lot of them, they'll say anything about BPD or narcissists, even narcissists, just to get the attention to their channel and or whatever they're selling. And I'm not like that, and I'm never going to be like that, and I'll stay buried under the algorithm. Thank you very much. She exposed the third rail and then hid behind her disabilities and then called me aggressive and then hid behind wanting to be coddled or something and then literally actually said, I don't have the email in front of me, but actually said something to the effect of, if she can't, and these are my words, hide behind the pseudoscience of psychiatry and those studies, and of course she got on her high horse saying, who am I to disagree because institutions and blah, blah, blah. Well, I do disagree. And I don't claim that I have all the answers, but I interviewed the psychiatrist. One of the interviews is on my channel, and the others are still at Blog Talk Radio. And I should put the other one up here, but not too many people are interested in this. But he said to me, he was a psychiatrist, and also had a PhD in philosophy. Really smart guy, and an honest guy, an Australian guy, blunt guy. Loved him. And we had lots of email contact too. And he was so blunt, but he said that what psychiatry was doing was driving itself off a cliff. And he recognized, and other psychiatrists have said things too. But guess what? They can't do it until they're older or almost retired, except for Dr. Peter Bregan's been a warrior. He's my hero as a psychiatrist. He's always been speaking up. But most of them are too worried about their own. And so this inaccurate information is all over the place. And now they've just exposed the third rail. And they don't care about any of us at all and what the difference is between Asperger's is not a trauma response. So how are you going to fuse that with BPD, which is, and NPD, which is? And it's just asinine. So anyway, here we go with it. So maybe I will, I don't know if it'd be copy. I could do it on my website. I could, because I recorded the video. So I could put her video on my website and critique the living what out of it. Like I tried to do reasonably with her. So she was so mixed messaged. Actually, if I tried to give a synopsis of those emails any more than I already have, my head would just spin. And I just said to her, like, whoa, the mixed messages here. I'm experiencing mixed messages. I don't know what to do. And she's sort of telling me, like, I said goodbye to her in my last email because I thought her last email was rather like, and I wish you the best, kind of like, okay, we're done. I don't know. And then I just answered back and said goodbye. And then she emailed back, and I'd sent something she didn't listen to in the meantime, response to another email. She emails back and she's like saying two things at once. I have all these problems. I can't figure this out. I didn't understand that. I'm sorry about this. And then gets into the high horse stuff. And then says somewhere near the end, well, I don't know because I have this difficulty in comprehending whatever her disability is. I don't want to make fun of that. In reading and comprehending. And I'm like, well, maybe she should call me in 6 months when she can catch up then. I don't mean to be like disrespectful. But she then said, so she didn't know she had the energy, and I'm like, well, if I'm too energetic or whatever for you, that's fine too, like whatever. I said, I never said to you had the obligation to reply to me or reply to me in any time frame or reply to me at all. And so then that's where I had to say to the psychiatrist in the glass high horse house, on the other hand, I'd say, listen, I take responsibility for my communication. I take responsibility for my feelings. I'm getting the sense here that you want me to hold your feelings. I'm not going to hold your feelings for you. I'm not going to coddle you. What you don't understand or don't, if you need a year to parse it and get back to me. I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking by that point. If you need a year to figure it out, but you think you're so much smarter than me and you're this big whooping, like, come on. And yes, lots of people with, like, I had the relationship with the BPD, NPD alcoholic, right? Well, she was a master of social work. She was more of a mess than anybody that ever walked into her office. I mean, there's a lot of that out there. Anyways, I'm passionate. Roller girl. I hear you, AJ, that person you are referring to. Some people remain offended. I appreciate you in this channel. Well, and you know what? If she's offended, then okay. But I didn't offend her, and there's a difference, right? This is why. And when I had to learn this in my recovery, it became very important and life changing for me. I'm here online to say to everybody, I don't care what label you're carrying, man up and woman up. And of course, I don't mean that in a hard, core way. But what I mean is everybody needs to get into whatever process they need to do to take responsibility for themselves, to gain more self-awareness, and to adult. And so people with the trauma label of BPD need to find themselves and etc. People that might be BPD, NPD, it's a much harder journey. Clover, I think you're somewhere in that neighborhood, and I mean that with all due respect. I care about you. I have empathy for you, and you matter. So you see, we don't have to take somebody who might, like Clover has alluded to, I don't know if you'd be full-blown BPD, comorbid NPD, but you said you have BPD with narcissistic traits. So just going with what you said, Clover Sale, I still think you're an important human being. I still hope you'll get some therapy and help. I don't think that we need to throw people out as garbage, because a lot of people are abusive, but not everybody who's been so traumatized and annihilated is as abusive as some. But just don't try to feed me this line like borderlines out there saying they're empaths. Like, please, gag me with a spoon or something. So I'm really about keeping it real. And this psychiatrist couldn't like take responsibility for her own feelings. Sorry, I'm not going to hold him, sweetheart. Well, that doesn't mean I'm unempathic. It just means, no, I'm not going to play codependent to your victimization. And yeah, I know she shared with me she had trauma in her past too. So do I. But like, I thought we were speaking like two academics. When she certainly pulled the high horse number, I thought she was coming from that. But after the pulling of the high horse and the like, who are you, and the I this and the that, then she goes back to victim. I'm like, I'm confused. I don't want to go any further with this. So, the agency's ignoring me, by the way, because I talked about, oh, that live stream went poof and not on my account. I technically lost it. So I said in a live stream that yes, it didn't. It got lost in what do you call it? Getting processed by YouTube, because they're really behind. What was it I said in that now? I lost my point. Um, yeah, but the thing is, like, her whole video is about the third rail that I spoke about, and her whole video is incoherent. It's childlike, which she even admitted. She comes across like an 8-year-old hairy, fairy, flaky person, and I'm not saying that she's that. I'm saying she comes across like that. And she gave me, I said, what are you basing this on? She threw a bunch of studies at me. I'd read most of them. Do you know what she was basing what she said in her video about? Because she was all up in gender stigma, gender stereotypes. It was like all over the place. And it wasn't correct. And so then she said, but I know all this and I do this and I train practitioners well, I'm like, okay, lady, you do that part of the day, and the rest of the day, what's going on in your head? Because you don't communicate very well. So in the video, she said she was going on these, mostly it's women diagnosed with BPD and men get diagnosed with NPD. Yeah, sure, okay. And what study did she give me? What reference to go look up that I read quickly? From 2003. Hello, 17 years old, if I'm doing the math that fast, that right? Um, and then in her latest email, it's, oh God, I can't take any more, really, I can't, because it's illogical. She said that, yes, and then she didn't say she agreed, but then she was acknowledging my point that I said all along. I mean, I said, that study's from 2003. Haven't you read anything more recent? Because the gender gap is closing in this crazy world of diagnoses by psychiatry. It's like, what? So anyway, they get inculcated with the ideology that it is science, and then they believe it, and then they're irresponsible in how they communicate it. And I was explaining to somebody earlier today, let's take this for a fact. Does trauma impact the brain? Yes. Can they see things on MRI and stuff like that? So are they identifying maybe some things that matter because the brain, so they identify things about the brain and they study that. And then they say people with BPD have this going on, and maybe they have a bit of a smaller hippocampus, and in the amygdala is this and that and this, and then we see like less activity over here. Okay, okay. So, is that absolute proof? Do they replicate the study? See, that's not what I have a problem with. It's all these other studies that are all, and a lot of the links that this person gave me, they were all self-reported studies. Well, that's where you start getting into a mess of like, how do you prove it? And they don't. And they don't do them over again. And they don't allow criticism of them. So I believe, let me put it this way, that when it comes to what they're identifying somewhat with MRI, I don't believe it's all accurate, but if they put some people with BPD's heads in there and they go, we see this, that, and that, this area of the brain isn't as active as that, or in the control group. Okay, good. You know what that means? It means what we already know. Trauma impacts the brain. Yes. What do they forget to say? The trauma part that impacted the brain. That's why they're seeing what they're seeing. And what's the other part they forget to say? And in recovery and healing And in therapy with people who know what they're doing, there's lots of people like me who understand all what I'm saying and believe what I'm saying. It's not just me. The other part is, and many modalities of therapy, neuroplasticity is real. And like Norman Doidge, the book, The Brain That Changes Itself. Well, it doesn't happen all by itself. But so they just take the middle piece and go, we see this in the brain, we see that in the brain. But they forget how it got there. Impact of trauma, yes. And they forget that you can change that in recovery, in healing. It's like, what is the game that they're playing by only putting forward the middle piece? And I haven't seen any psychiatrist online, doesn't mean there isn't one, but I watch all their stupid conference videos where they get up there and they say all the claptrap stuff they say, and not a one of them can go from step one trauma, get its impact to the brain, to the fact that then a person is having these symptomologies and difficulties in life, which is not pathological until you get to like malignant narcissism and beyond, but some behavior can be abhorrent. And then they don't talk about the neuroplasticity. So what game are they really playing? It's gaslighting at the very least. Oh, thank you for that, Clover. But I'm quite fine today. And whenever I share, I take responsibility. I deal with my emotions, etc. And I'm not being aggressive to anyone. But of course, the trolls will all tell you I'm aggressive too. Oh yes, of course. And I saw a comment on another channel. Somebody who used to be on my channel. They have their own narrative of what happened there, but they're still a victim. Okay. And they came onto a live stream of mine when they were already blocked and I didn't want them on a live stream of mine, and they knew why, and I was prepared to talk to them privately even when I didn't have to. And then I made the mistake, as I will make mistakes, but I'm learning. I know this live stream is going to open me wide, but I don't give a rat's ass. Okay, I don't care. I'm strong enough. I know what I'm talking about, and I know why I'm talking about it. And if people don't like it, that's their right. They can disagree all day long. I'm fine with that. So, so this person who referenced me slightly on another channel, and the YouTuber at least didn't out loud, but the comment sits there as these things are accruing elsewhere. And maybe it'll all blow up again. I don't really care because I know who I am. And so, anyway, then they said that, oh, they got smeared by me when I didn't agree with them. It's kind of like, hello, but this is somebody who's gone through everybody's YouTube channel and is never going to see themselves for who they are, whatever that might mean. Now they're going to know, and I could make it worse by saying that, but I'm really not afraid of the little dude. Um, Edith, keep the power, pass it on. God wanted you here. Keep speaking. Um, Stop or all the neo-intellectual pretenders. Well, you know what? It's funny because actually a client that I've been doing a lot of work with right now, I mean, I do a lot of work with a lot of clients, but actually was giving me some feedback, and after their session, let me be clear, and they said exactly something like that to me too. And sometimes I need to be reminded of that. So thank you so much, Edith. That's very touching because you know, um, I take a lot of heat. I have not a lot of trolls, but I have stubborn ones. I have people that when I assert myself on this channel, and when I say things strongly, and I'm not saying people can't disagree with me all day long. But the narrative out there of trolls is, oh, she can't be disagreed with. Oh, she's an arc. Oh, she's this. Oh, she's still borderline. Well, you know what? I don't give a rat's ass. Let them say it because I know my truth. So yeah, and and thank you for that, Edith, because I need to be reminded sometimes of why I am here. I'm not here to get. Sure, I'd love the channel to grow. If you haven't subscribed, please do click the notification bell. Sports channel. You want to comment? Please comment. And as long as you're not being abusive to me, all comments go through. There's a reason why, like to protect, people with BPD from the people who've been hurt by the. I don't want people fighting with each other on the channel, so I moderate it. But I don't sit there and decide, oh, I don't like the comment, so it doesn't go through. No. People disagree with me. Comments go through all the time. People say stuff I don't even understand what they mean. And that's fine. So welcome comments, welcome questions, welcome disagreement. But yeah, I'm here, and I'm gonna have a small unpopular buried in the algorithm channel because I am gonna keep it real. But guess why? because it was being real, getting real, keeping it real. The therapist I was so fortunate to work with, that they worked with me, that it was all about getting honest and getting real, and keeping it honest and being real. That's the only way to get better. That's the only way to stay healthy in an insane world. So yeah, there's a lot of people out there, and I don't know what's going on in a lot of YouTube channels, and I'm not pointing a finger, but there's a lot of them out there. Watch out for the narcissist pretending to be a codependent. Watch out for the psychopathic narcissist trying to help narcissistic abuse survivors. Watch out for them because they're out there. And some of them even admit it. People keep watching them. And then there's Vaknin and that whole mystique. Okay. But hey, I've watched them sometimes too. Sometimes you can learn something, but the rest of it, Tammy, you do realize that hearing specific stories about your abuse can be very triggering for people. Maybe you could either not get specific or give some kind of warning. Well, Tammy, I hear you. I respect that. But again, because I keep it real, people need to take care of their own feelings. People need to take care of themselves. I don't believe in trigger warnings. I believe in people learning, getting into therapy, being proactive for themselves, and learning how to cope with those triggers. So I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm not here to trigger anyone, but I'm not here to sugarcoat it either. And I'm not going to coddle anybody. And that doesn't mean I don't have empathy, but that's keeping it real. So if somebody, or if yourself, if you were triggered, of course, I don't want to have any ill effect on anyone, but you're responsible for your own triggers. I'm not. Of course, it's not how I work with clients. It's a little bit different, right? It's a whole different process. But when I'm here, I'm somehow trying to be a person too. It's kind of like a hard balancing act. But I don't believe in trigger warnings. I believe in people who have triggers and think they need trigger warnings. I believe in them getting proactive and healing that. That's the journey. That's the challenge. That's the possibility that awaits people. Not being sheltered from stuff. That's enabling, and I don't want to enable anybody, but I also don't want to hurt anybody. So that's a fine balance to kind of hold, isn't it? Anita said, thanks for your down to earth transparency. Have you ever tried a hand at ministry? Oh, interesting. You actually touch people's hearts and ears. Well, I am a minister, Edith. I am. But I don't work as one right now. So, but I did take that in university as well. Interesting that you would say that because I'm a Christian and a weird one at that, out of the box in every which way. That's just the path that God gave me to walk. Don't live inside any box. Don't cuddle up to any group. Don't follow the masses or the herd ever. I don't know. That's just me. And so, actually, everything I do here is in the service of God. And so that's keeping it real. I don't talk about it a lot because I respect that other people aren't Christian. I respect people don't believe in God. All of that. I respect people's individual right to feel whatever they feel, believe whatever they believe or don't believe, agree with me or disagree with me. So it's interesting because I think that it is when I do other kinds of messages and I want to do more writing as well that God works through me. I mean, I'm humble about this. I'm not coming from an egoic place with anything I say here, but I will say stuff that people will disagree with and people will be offended by, and people are not ready to hear, or maybe they just will never agree. That's okay too. They don't need to take me so seriously then as some other trolls that cannot let go and are freaking obsessed with me. Well, they don't realize why. Because if they wouldn't have been abusive to me, I could have helped them. But no, they'd rather stay a victim. These are the choices that these people have made. And then they continue to try to abuse me. Well, cool. I guess I got to do what they got to do. And Edith said Indigo Children was more New Age crap. Yes, I figured. I vaguely heard of it, but to tell you the truth, I don't know what it means. Um, Describing bratty, dysfunctional kids as special, I compare it to the narcissistic magnet routine others use to blame victims. I know, I know. See, everything is devolving. Well, not everything, but a lot of things online are devolving. We're in a devolving deconstructionist, postmodernist, post-fact, post-truth world. It's insane. Well, and when I'm talking about psychiatry, by the way, I don't claim that I have all the answers, but I will say, until and unless they have scientific proof, bring it to me and then we can talk. But until then, I'm not changing my opinion, because all they got is ideology and they weaponize the ideology. And I'm not the only person saying this, but I might be the only YouTuber saying this. And again, Dr. Peter Breggin is my hero, and I maybe should really contact him and beg him to do an interview for my channel, because I love that man. I don't know him, but he's like, I don't want to compare myself to him because we're very different, and I want to be really respectful of him. But he is the renegade, and I'm a renegade too. Just like I guess I don't know what I think of David Icke anymore. But I watched a movie about him on iTunes. It was called The Renegade. Well, renegades are needed in the world today more than ever before. And I am praying every day that Jordan Peterson he's doing better. I pray that he keeps getting better. We need his voice right now today more than we needed it 2 or 3 years ago. And I don't agree with everything Jordan Peterson says, but we need his voice out there today. And I hope that he gets healthy and he can come back out and share his voice with us again. Because it's too quiet in a way without his voice in the mix. Rav, hi AJ. I missed the name of the author about the book you mentioned about CPTSD. Oh, it's CPTSD Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. And it's available like if you want the book or audio or Kindle. Um yeah, so it's CPT I did, but I will again. I think I said that rather quickly. CPTSD From Thriving to Surviving by Pete Walker. Because yes, Rob, what you were explaining in a live stream last night or the other day, and I mentioned to you should look into CPTSD. So yes, please definitely for yourself get that book. Take it slowly. And remember, I'm out here to help if need be, right? Because I really believe what you described, you are having symptoms of CPTSD. Edith, ah yes, the blessed inventory. I remember that one oh so well. Oh, I know. And I did a video in response to the big smear thing that happened to me. Yeah, I made a bit of a mistake, but it wasn't like all that, and it was with good intention. But anyway, let's not drag. That's bound to blow back up again. It is. And then I have a choice to make because I ignored it the first time. I don't think I'll be so generous and kind the second time around. But I did a video after that about how people should take their own inventories instead of each other's, which was kind of alluding to something, but still a good message, I thought. Edith, it took me until college to learn better once I accumulated all those maladaptive behaviors I picked up. Well, I mean, I was in college and university, and it was still going to take me another 10 years, like, and through all that time. So yeah, I hear ya. And you said, call me about the math. I found that as super strength. So in other words, are you good at it or do you suck at it like me? I don't know. Because all I know is I was too stressed out and too traumatized as a kid. By the time we got to grade 9 math, I couldn't hear a word that the math teacher said. And when he put x plus x, I mean, I was spinning. And I have high functioning Asperger's, and I didn't know then, and the lights were killing me. And I couldn't think straight in that room. And I was literally hanging onto the desk because I was spinning around the room with anxiety, math anxiety, and the light effect, the overstimulation of the lights. And so, which I can handle now for short periods of time. But like, oh. So the thing is, when he went x plus x is 2x, I was like, what? Never mind. I was lost there. I just started skipping the class. I'm like, what am I putting myself through this for? But if math is a super strength for you, that's great. I mean, I think I definitely have strengths in areas, and I can be strong in them all for sure. I don't mind being a math moron. I don't feel bad about it at all. And I have a friend who's a math professor, so she's had some fun with me. I sat down one time and how they take philosophical concepts and put them into equations like that fascinates me, but I don't make the leap with them at all. And I can get the philosophy of anything, but if you're going to put in an equation, no, excuse me, I got to go to the bathroom. But one day I said to her, yeah, do it. I was over at her house and she has this big whiteboard all around her basement that she does all her equations on and stuff. I said, do it, yeah, and try to explain it to me, and we'll see what I couldn't keep up, but like it was really fascinating to watch her do all that. But it was like she may as well have just been writing, no offense to Hebrew, but I don't know how to speak Hebrew, and or hieroglyphics or something. She did because I didn't know, but it was kind of a fun experience anyway, even though I got lost, which is what we both knew would happen, and then we both laughed about it. And Eve, you said my narc was the favorite Aunt B character. Oh my. We don't think Aunt B was a narcissist, do we? I don't know. Um, Out Lucia. I'm sorry, I can't see that clearly. This white on black, I gotta get rid of it. I don't know how I got BPD when my family wasn't abusive. Well, there's 25%. That's what I'm always talking about, the difference between 75% and 25%. This stuff is not 100% explainable, right? Because we really don't understand everything, or psychiatry is like nuts what they think that they can call science. But basically, what likely happened in your case, and I would ask you first, were you adopted? Because there's more correlation with not everybody gets adopted, but that's traumatic and can be an abandonment wound for children and with a sensitive temperament. So what likely happened in your case is that it was perception, that you have a sensitive temperament, and that like your mom probably was a pretty good mom, I don't know. And then you said your family wasn't abusive. So maybe your mom just, didn't get there as fast as you needed her to for what your level of need was, which I'm not laying any blame, right? You're an infant, you have a need, you have a sensitive temperament. I know I had a sensitive temperament. I know I cried. I know I needed faster probably than the golden child did. But so then there's a perception of abandonment that happens. And whether abandonment is perceived or actual, it affects people in largely the same way because it's experienced, even the perception of it is experienced as traumatic. And especially the younger one is. Hey there, Wills. How's it going? Edith, to out to sea. I see it now. Okay, I was out to lunch. Sorry, out to sea. You've experienced something that triggered you. Well, yes, and it can be perception based, right? And then sometimes in the 25%, as I've worked with mothers of adult children in the 25%, and or people with BPD, the label, in the 25%, sometimes they also have been sexually abused by like an uncle or a babysitter or somebody down the street or some other adverse experience, traumatic experience, but it's not within the family unit. And sometimes people don't know, or it's repressed. Sometimes the parents don't even know. And so, but that's not always the case. But sometimes there's outside of the family, not only what I just said, but there can be another kind of trauma or something that happens from somebody else that affects a person too. So, but it can be perception based. And he just said, just take the time to flesh it out. You'll find the root cause eventually. Yes, or if there isn't anything abusive in out to sea's past, they'll come to realize they had a sensitive temperament, perhaps, and they perceived that what they perceived what they perceived, which then becomes as real as if it was what it is in the 75% of abandonment I'm talking about. And so then people with quote BPD from the 25% still need the same healing and recovery journey because it's the way that it affects especially infants and toddlers, right? Tammy, who cares? Honestly, AJ, and I'm sure others don't come on here to listen to you rant about people. What was the topic again? Actually, I don't think I'm ranting about someone, but if that's how you heard it, and if you don't care what I'm talking about, that's okay, because last I checked, I'm not holding you here. But I'm talking about that people with BPD are not empaths, and that they make choices and that they're responsible for those choices. And aside from that, I talked about that because it is something that's coming down the pike from the pseudoscience of psychiatry that's going to really hurt more people with BPD and or NPD if they care. So that's, I thought it was topical. So anyway, I'm not going to justify myself any more than that. You want to be that way, or you feel that way, or you want to be hostile, go ahead. Um, To each their own. I love that. Honestly, AJ, who cares? Ooh, ouch. I don't care either, Tammy. Edith, most intellectuals are pretentious robots, soulless automatons. I know. Well, I know some people, that I knew from university. They're intellectual or academic, and they're not like that. But yeah, too many are like that. And maybe I'm not in their class anyway. Who knows? Wills, dude, nothing bugs me more than people using their disabilities to not take responsibility for life. Well, yeah, that was kind of a point with part of what I was talking about before, but oh, gee, I guess just because Tammy's here, I shouldn't talk about it ever again, right? Actually, I was kind of finished talking about it anyway. So there you go. Um, Edith to out to sea. No problem. We're all growing. We'll meet the same judge after we die, and we'll have to put in the elbow grease to develop personally. Don't give up, or the narcs and pretenders win. Yes. Clover Cell, I have a question. Maybe I do have a self, but I have a false self that refuses to let it through. It makes a lot of sense, Clover Cell. In fact, that's right on. You said, because like all the stuff I talk about is embarrassing, but like, is that who I am? Um, well, I think what you're becoming aware of, or what you know there, what you're saying is that there is a false self, and the false self does take over when the arrested emotional development happens. And so you've lost yourself, and yeah, there's a false self. But what does that mean? Well, of course there's a fragment, remnant part of your actual self there. That's what you might be experiencing when you ask that question, which is great, by the way, and means that if you get into therapy, you can find more of that self. And then what happens in that process is the false self has to stand down, part of the process, because the false self has, everybody has a false self, but not like what happens to people with the trauma response of BPD or even NPD. That false self takes over. So, yeah, it sounds like you are realizing there is something under that false self, and that's who you really are. And if you do go to therapy, that's who you can find out much more about. I'm so excited that you realize that. Excited for you that you realize that. And he just said to Cloversail, if people can listen, keep walking. Can't listen, keep walking. You're not some stringed performer here to entertain anybody. Everybody has an old self. You are worth it. And then you said, Jesus died for you, remember. Yes. Clover, Edith, what do you mean, old self? Edith to Clover, I mean a profile that evolved incorrectly and requires correction. Well, yeah, a lost self, but there's still a remnant of that lost self there. And it's about finding out, because see, your self gets interrupted, your development gets interrupted. So, in the way that I would put it, like Edith, when you were created and what God meant for you and who God meant you to be got interrupted and lost, right? But there's a remnant of that person who you really would be without everything that happened to you in your childhood that you can go to therapy and still find. Um, nah, well, I don't think is the old self. So is the old self a false self in narcissism? Doesn't have to be in narcissism, but no, the old self is who you really were, and you're lost from that self right now. The false self is just taking the place of that self. Wheels, Tammy, it's AJ's stream, and she has just as free to say what she wants as you are to listen. Yeah, or not. I mean, I don't mind one way or the other. Um, I don't know why such a strong reaction, but that's not my responsibility. Edith to Clovercell, run from the folks who appear to be too quote together unquote. They're the predators. Well, often that's true. We're all learning, be human. That's what God meant for us to do. Yes, in the really imperfect condition of humanity. But to always be growing, right? And to always be seeking more. That's what I believe. And you said we stop growing and transitioning and we die. Exactly. And people get too fake and plastic when they intervene. Nobody is going to agree all the time. I found in 2016 when I didn't understand that what I was suffering had a name, narcissism. Oh. And then you said two. Too right you are. Pretenders, 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 bad actors, pod people, and nut jobs pretending to be messiahs. Well, yeah. Out to sea. I'm probably going to hell. Oh, I wonder why you think that. I think we're all in hell right now, frankly. Right here on this, sometimes with the nature it's lovely, isn't it? But Edith, to herds. Jesus seemed weird to herds too. You bear his mark, thanks. Well, thank you for that. Because I'm not Jesus, of course, but yes, I know what you mean. Um, and Edith, too, out to sea. Only God can determine that. Lots of folks believe the opposite, but have a piping hot surprise waiting after they kick the bucket. And yeah, and Edith said, I need to look up The Renegade. Thanks, I'm always looking for new stuff. I'll have to hit Pete Walker up on that book too. Yeah, it's a good book. Wherein he says that if the DSM would recognize, if American psychiatry would recognize CPTSD, their DSM that grows every edition thicker and thicker would be a friggin' pamphlet. But then he chickens out and walks back that would include the trauma response of BPD as well, right? In CPTSD or something like that. And he just said, I like math. I just did it on my own way, not the teacher's. Oh, I couldn't do it any which way. You said there are tips and tricks that circumvent traditional trajectories. I'm an elliptical thinker, not a linear one. Okay, well that sounds very interesting. I don't know what I am, probably highly associative, but I'm not a linear thinker either. Though I think critical thinking skills and logic might be a little more, somewhat linear, but the rest, no. Um, oh, you weren't adopted. Okay, well, it can be perception based. And I don't mean to minimize by saying that. Edith, no, my narc just seemed benevolent to everybody except to those who knew her more closely. Well, they do that for supply and it's image management, right? And I've been seeing a therapist, but we aren't getting very far. Time to change therapist then, seriously. Look at your part in that, but like sometimes it's the therapist, not the client. Um, and Wheels, it's not going well tonight. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I probably can't say much here, but things have escalated quite a bit tonight. I'm beside myself right now. It hasn't been this crazy in a while. I don't even know what to do at this point. I'm so sorry to hear that. Right now, I'm just trying to calm down and think my way through this right now. Well, yes, lots of deep breaths. I mean, but I'm really sorry to hear that because, you're doing so well. And yeah, it's just, you're going through so much. And I'm so sorry. Edith, be patient with yourself to out to sea. You can make all the progress you need. Growth is like proofing dough. It takes time to rise and form a pretty loaf of bread. Yeah. Um, where did I just lose my place there? I'm so good at that. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's a cool analogy. And out to sea, though, everyone in my life is growing tired of me in the meantime. Well, the best you can do is be true to yourself and keep seeking. And if you don't feel like the therapy's working, then try to find another therapist. Try to find a better fit. Um, Anita said to out to sea. You'll love the butterfly development from larva to adult stage analogy if you like that one. Yes, the transformation. Yes, I like that one too. That's why I use a lot of butterflies, on websites, pictures, and I did the Phoenix Rising thing till I found out the undertones of that. But sort of like, yeah, the myth of the Phoenix Rising, although it's got other things associated with it I don't like anymore. But it's basically when we seek to face anything, And that's why I'm always talking about people need to embrace their pain. Might sound counterintuitive, but it's by facing the pain and going through the pain and learning how to cope with that process that we can actually be set free, that we can grow forward. And the pain makes it feel impossible, but things aren't always how they feel. And yeah, your other thing you said, Edith, was the caterpillar to butterfly or moth. Yes. Um, yes, I like analogies a lot too. They're cool. And life can be hellish at times. Tammy, so me having an opinion and voicing it isn't okay then? Oh, come on. Now you're just, you know what you're doing now? You're being a victim. Did I block you? Did I kick you out? Did I? No, you're still here. You're still saying what you want to say. So what do you mean it isn't okay? You voiced your opinion? Yeah, it's okay. It's fine. I had maybe an opinion back to what you said. That's all that happened there. You said 3/4 of the stream was talking. No, it's not. Talking shit about people and talking about yourself. Well, I'm using myself as an example, so that's a self reference, but no, I mean, whatever. You know, if that's how you see it, I mean, you were free at any point in time, and you are to say anything you want about yourself, or to ask a question, or to interact with somebody else. So it's not me talking about me to talk about me. It's me. I was using an example from my life recently, but I go back and reference self for what I've been through to relate to others in a way to try to be helpful. But if you just see it as me talking shit about people and talking about myself, me wonders what you're projecting, Tammy. It's not cool to suppose to be helping people and not care. Well, see, because I said I don't care back to you said you didn't care. No, it's not a double standard like that. You're just playing victim here. So you're gonna say I made you a victim because you said really AJ who cares, and I said that after a bit when I said I don't care that you don't care. I'm not being a professional here right now. This is not therapy. This is not counseling. I'm a person. So you get to say you don't care, but I don't get to say that I don't care about the opinion you shared back to what you didn't care about what I shared. What? See, that's how it goes. People, you're not taking personal responsibility, Tammy, and you're just throwing stuff at me. Cool. That's evolved. So, I guess this is an example of somebody with BPD who might just not understand their own choices and isn't taking personal responsibility. So, yeah. Ooh, I become the bad guy. That's the narrative. Wheels, I actually ended up sending you a message explaining what happened right after everything happened. Oh, I'm so sorry. I haven't looked on that. I'm sorry. Just because I wanted someone to know what happened, and even my dad thought shit was crazy. Well, I definitely will check into that and get back to you, Wheels, because I just didn't see it. I'm very sorry about that. Um, really, really sorry to hear what's going on, what's happened, even though I don't know specifically what it is, but I will find out if you sent me the details. So, yeah, well, because somebody disagreed with me and said they didn't care, I'm just talking shit about people and I'm just talking about myself. Okay. So that's what the stream has been reduced to, in Tammy's own opinion. Good. Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you just keep it real and tell it like it is. If I just wanted to talk about myself all day to talk about myself, that would be different. That's not the intent. That's not the purpose. That's not the meaning. But I'm not going to defend myself here. So, and I think it's really important that people realize that people with BP are responsible for what they do. They need to learn how to take responsibility. And yeah, what happens when they don't, and when they say that they don't care about what you're talking about, and then you have an opinion back, whatever you might say to that, then they become a victim, and then they get critical and judgmental and devaluing, and voila, there's a living example of it. So, nothing else I can do with that, really. And then people take all that personally, and then they become the next person to thumb down things. That's how that works. I mean, might not in this case, might, but has in other cases. So, well, I'm not here as some perfect. I'm not perfect. And when I said I didn't care, it was about something very specific, which I have the right to say that as a human being. It had nothing to do with I don't care about people. Yeah, that's why I'm here doing a live stream because I don't give a crap about anybody. That's why I do the videos. That's why I do the websites. That's why I've been online since 1995 because I don't care about anybody. Wow, that's cute. So anyway, I just thought it was important to get this message out. And when I was talking about something else, I wasn't actually talking shit about the person at all. I was talking about something that actually occurred, and how a psychiatrist can play high horse and pull rank on you, and then act like a victim. That's pretty much essentially what that was about. I don't feel like a victim of that person or anything. So, but I guess I shouldn't say the word I because I'm not really here. I don't really exist. I just reference my past to help other people. Good God. And I don't think I did it once in the last live stream. So maybe what I need to do is go back to that format and not ever stray from it. Because, you know, I know I don't have to apologize. And I know I'm talking to myself with everything I just said there. Because the person isn't going to hear it. They're too busy with their stuff. And that's fine. But don't sling crap at me that's yours. I'm not going to hold it. It's yours, Tammy, not mine. And, well, of course I do care, but like people are entitled to their own opinion, however convoluted they are. That's fine. I'm not saying every time somebody has a different opinion than mine, it's convoluted, but this one here was. Or that's my opinion anyway, for what it's worth. Maybe not anything. Who knows? Um, but a person can say they don't care about something and it's not a global statement. That would be the other thing that people with BPD do. They'll take one thing you say and globalize it and then devalue and judge. And yeah, great example. So anyway, don't know if I have much more to say about people. We just got a great example of something there with BPD, but which is unfortunate because not all people with BPD are the same. Everybody's in their own place. Everybody has their own reactions to stuff. But yeah, I do have a video out there, by the way, if anybody's interested about the myth of the borderline empath. And Wheels, do you want me to? Well, no, not really. I'm not really worried about it. And if it devolves much more, perhaps, but not at this point. She can express herself all she wants because what she's doing is representing herself for who she is, and she has the right to do that. Hey there, Allie, how are you doing? Jenna, I appreciate these streams. Thank you. You're very welcome. Oh, BXWX, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. You said thanks for all you do, AJ. I appreciate you. Well, thank you so very much. And thank you for the donation. That's very kind of you. Super appreciate that. And I hope you're taking good care of yourself. Um, so what's up in your how are you doing, Jenna? And what's up in your neck of the woods, Allie? What do you think of and Allie, somebody recovering from BPD? What do you think about people with BPD who think they're empaths? Or you might think you might I don't know you may think that. So I want to respect whatever you do think. But people with BPD, I just seen too many people out there saying, and not people with BPD saying this, that well they don't know what they're doing and they can't help it, and it's all and some of it is subconscious, but it's enabling to kind of give a narrative that people don't need to keep working to be responsible and learn more about what they're doing or how they're affecting others. But yeah, so hey JT, how are you? Long time no see. Allie, I'm doing pretty good. Just relaxing with a fire. Just happy to be here. Oh, cool. You know what? It's so hot in here, I don't need a fire. Plus, it's still hot in southern Ontario. I take it it's still lovely in your area up north in the boonies. Out to sea. Can you become narcissistic? Can you be narcissistic and empathic? Not really, no. But then it depends what you mean by narcissistic, right? You could have a trait or two maybe, but if somebody has narcissistic, well, the trauma response known as narcissistic personality disorder, then no, they're really not going to be capable of empathy unless you think what Bakken says about cold empathy matters. I don't really think it does, but Allie, ooh, AJ, thanks. I'd love to answer this. Cool. JT, good, thanks. Good to see y'all. Good to see you too, JT. What you been up to? Yeah, I'm just having to kind of keep the fluids going because wow, it's hot in here. Of course, it gets hotter when the air conditioner's off for the longer it gets hotter, which is of course common sense, right? Um, yeah, I'm wondering what Allie's gonna give us an answer there. It'd be interesting. And everybody remember when people want to be conflictual on a live stream, it's really important just to deep breathe, relax, remember who you are. If you know who you are, I know who I am, so I'm remembering who I am. And I'm being very mindful. And I love this video. It's so like, I'm going to do something. It's going to come in like a series of videos. They're not going to cost much, but they aren't going to be on YouTube free. I want to do something really relaxing and really educational and to help people who don't already know about mindfulness. I think this video is cool. Big deal, right? Allie, okay, well, I do believe, at least for myself, I have been an empath or highly sensitive. Yes, and I wonder if really the two are synonymous, but I hear you. In the sense, I sense certain things or have things happen that I can't explain, but no, I do not believe they. Oh, you left us hanging in the middle. I know this character limit, right? So have to wait for the rest of that. That's good so far, Allie. Oh, that thing isn't looping. Why isn't that looping? It should be looping. It's loopy that it's not looping. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I see. Yes, delay. Oh, so it's going to make me select that to go back to. Whoops, wrong one. No, we don't need the guy in denial right now. Sorry for the blank screen. I sort of like didn't catch something in time. You've been doing very basic runouts. Oh, interesting. And Allie, okay, well, I do believe, at least for myself. Oh, yes, things that happen I can't explain. But no, I do not believe they are empaths. They are just highly sensitive people. I think when they believe they are empaths, oh, the suspense of it all. Uh, Everybody have a mindful deep breath moment. And make sure that you care about yourself because that is equally as important. That I had the fact that somebody wanted to say, I don't care, challenged here. Okay, well, make sure you care about yourself is the uber most important thing in your world, in your life. But I care too. So you said they believe they're empaths, that they are having what they call projecting. Yes, yes, that makes sense to me. Edith, to Allie. Now I miss my old house with the Stearns cans, fake logs, and plastic interface. That's interesting. And Allie, a lot of times people with BP think they know what other people are thinking or feeling, when really that's often what they are feeling. Yes. And they project out and projective identification, and they'll put that out on other all the well, I shouldn't say all the time, but often, and many people with BPD, and then think that they're yes, because the problem with people with BPD thinking or like if the reality that they can't is so people with BPD saying they're an empath is like anathema, an oxymoron, because they're doing exactly what you said, Allie. And when they don't know how they feel or they can't handle their own feelings, how are they supposed to accurately read how somebody else feels? I mean, they can read maybe if somebody is angry or something like that, but then they also are involved in a lot of magical thinking. So believing that what they feel is real. And I mean, what they feel has some reality to it. But yeah, it gets all jumbled up. And so I think lots of people with BPD are highly sensitive. But I think there's been a conflating of highly sensitive is the quote, the empath, unquote. And you said you've been guilty of that in the past. Well, and it's great that you recognize and you know that now, right? That you were able to grow and you know that now. And Out to Sea said that makes sense to Allie. I have people tell me I project a lot. And JT, ooh, that's good, Allie. Yeah, isn't it? Because see, everybody with BPD is not in the same place for sure at all. And lots of people will heal and recover. And that's another thing too that a lot of people say out there is, oh, well, they can go to therapy, but they'll never change, and they can't change. And that's not true either. It's up to each person to find the right fit and go the whole course. And it's not true that people with BPD have to have BPD forever. Um, out to Sea. What's the difference between empathic and highly sensitive? Well, I think that's what's at issue here, because I think the difference really is that people that are highly sensitive are first and foremostly really aware of feeling a lot of emotion themselves. And then sometimes, like people with BPD can project that out onto others. So, whose feelings is the highly sensitive person really feeling? Like more often than not, would be the question. I don't know that there's one hard and fast answer to that. And people who believe they're between empathic and highly sensitive. Well, I would probably answer that by saying there is something that really can be measured and is known as healthy empathy. And then there's when empathy is people are giving so much empathy and not to themselves. But a lot of it's projected out feelings, etc. That So empathy is something that's healthier, that we can feel for others and that we can feel for ourselves, not necessarily at the same time, and but that we don't get overwhelmed with the other people's feelings, because that can often be very projective in nature or extremely codependent or some mix of both. So being highly sensitive is feeling everything in a really, like everything you feel is sort of like ramped up. So if other people are feeling things at level 7 in a certain environment or whatever, or 6, or maybe 5, the highly sensitive person is always like stuck on 10 or 15 on a scale of 10. And it's often got something to do with, I think it's protective. I think it's really protective. And I think people that have, so it's rather, I'm kind of saying it's quote unhealthy empathy when it is too much, when it actually hurts a person themselves, when it's not really empathy anymore. It's evolving into over giving, over feeling someone else's stuff and kind of abandoning oneself. That's yeah, it's codependency. And I think I lost the other train of thought, what I was going to say about that. So be highly sensitive emotion isn't always emotion that's about empathy, is another way I could kind of respond to that. Well, Ali, you really do help, and I think you help people that watch these back, and people in all kinds of different places in their life, and it's really great to see people like yourself and others who are really have come a long way, and you're on your way, and probably you'll be recovered soon. It's great because you're so close, I think. You said, I do believe I have some empath traits, but it's not necessarily what people think it is. People take it way out of context. Well, and again, empath traits. What's an empath trait versus a human trait? Because psychiatry pathologizes BPD by defining it based on all human traits. Okay, so with more frequency and intensity, but still they're human traits. So I think it's about balance for sure, and Allie, that's just my beliefs though, because I practice a lot of spirituality, and some people believe that, and some don't, and that's okay too. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not here to try to change what everybody believes, but I just think it's problematic and largely enabling the narrative out there in a broad scope way. Because, like I keep saying, in other ways about other things, there's no monolithic group. Like, there's no monolithic group of, like, not all people are the same, period. Not all people with BPD are the same. Not all people with NPD are the same. Not all people with codependency are the same. And a lot of the narrative online kind of goes along this idea that everybody's the same. And that's the first really cognitive distorted thought in the mix. Allie, it's hard to explain, AJ. It's more of a spiritual thing. Oh yeah, I mean, and I'm pretty spiritual too, or I get faith based and we're spiritual, but I don't really apply that to anything that would have to do with an empath or being highly sensitive. I'm not highly sensitive anymore, but I have empathy. And JT, that's true, AJ. Can highly sensitive be internal self focus? It often is, and it often is generated from there. And often people may not be aware of that. And the same can be said of people with codependency, because a lot of people with codependency don't think they have codependency; they think they're empaths. It's just not a helpful, and yet it's so propagated out there. I don't think it's helpful. It's like a label that people want to embrace versus all the other labels that aren't so overly helpful either. But people want to embrace that one because it seems like it's positive or something. I don't know. It's confusing. Like there's no one answer for it. That's for sure. And Allie, but yes, you're right. I don't know what that's referring to. Tammy, everyone seeking recovery, watching your videos, is at a different place. You're absolutely right about that. It is really that hard to not talk specifics. Is it really that hard to not talk specifics of abuse? I'm not looking to argue here. I truly want to understand. Um, well, I think where I'm coming from with that, Tammy, is that I operate from the premise that people need to, and if they can't yet, they should get into a process whereby they can learn to deal with their triggers, because that's what's foremostly important for every individual. And I can't possibly know what would need to be triggered warning versus something else, because when I do videos, I have no idea who's watching them. So, of course, people are in a different place. And unless people comment or for a time become regular commenters, etc., and share things about themselves, or the reality that, a lot of people that over the years and at any given time that watch my videos and might comment, maybe clients, but I can only say that very vaguely. I can't possibly know. So it's just really my philosophy where I'm coming from. I don't mean to be insensitive or uncaring to anyone, but I think trigger warnings are enabling. And so I don't want to enable people. I think that people with BPD can learn how to cope with, and lots have. And I don't know where you're at with it, but people can so really if something triggers you, like maybe earlier something did, or in a video I do, or anybody does, it's really important for you. Hopefully you've had some therapy, in therapy, maybe DBT, who knows, be really important for you to be able to understand more about what's triggering you and what's happening for you so you can take care of you. Because it's really hard for me to think that I can take care of people watching the videos, right? That would be me being like super codependent or something. So I hope the best answer I can give you. And then I noticed you said I dissociated. No, it's not your problem. No, I care about it though, Tammy. And you said, yes, I'm responsible for my own healing and currently actively working on things. So I'm really glad to hear that. And I really want you to know that I really care, and I'm sorry to hear that you dissociated. And I didn't say it wasn't my problem. I just said it's not my responsibility. And that means because, as you said, you're in a process and you're working on your responsibility to learn more about those triggers and your reactions and to be able to heal that. So good for you, And I didn't say it wasn't my problem. I think I used the word it wasn't my responsibility. But if I did say it wasn't my problem, then I apologize because that's not really very kind. And Ali said, if you really research empath in terms of the way you're talking about, I do think it basically does explain the traits of BPD. Well, you know what else, dare I say? Many people, not everyone, and I don't know who's who, but many people that identify as empaths can also be vulnerable narcissists. So could be that somebody has traits or has BPD, but it can also be a vulnerable narcissist. And it varies. And I'm not saying everybody that would identify with that label would be that. Many more of them are codependent. And then like whatever that label's worth. You know what I mean? Because when I talk about codependency, I'm not making a blaming statement, right? But I think some people think that about that word, or some people do wield that word that way. Tammy, is it necessary to bring your point across to talk about specifics rather than generally? Well, Tammy, I think my answer to that would probably be sometimes I guess it is because that's what I do. And I think sometimes I do speak more generally. And I think that with all due respect, I really mean this with respect and empathy, you're kind of maybe asking me to change how I do what I do. And I can't do that. I do what I do how I do it. And I don't mean to hurt anyone. I don't want to trigger anybody. I do care about that. But it depends, like in this live stream, I can't even know who's going to come. I can't know who's going to watch. I can't know who's going to watch later. And I hear a lot from people with BPD, and as long as they're not swearing at me, their comments go through the channel. There's one out there right now I haven't got to respond to yet. A person that likes some of what I said, but they can't stand the title I used, etc. And I hear people on that. But I guess what I need to say back to that, Tammy, is yeah, sometimes it's necessary to bring my point across and talk about specifics. And at other times I think I talk more generally. And I can't censor myself, like we're so censored on this platform anyway in other ways, but I can't censor myself as much as maybe I wish I could. But how would I be helping people and keeping it real and just kind of the kind of person I am and really about putting it out there? And it is controversial sometimes. I can't really be censoring myself that way. So I care about that you got triggered and that you dissociate. I really care about that. And I just encourage you to keep working on that. And I'm sorry that happened. It's not my intent at all, but I can't censor myself either. So I hope that makes some sense because it's not an either or proposition, right? Like I hear you and I care. And I think in lots of videos, I do make caveats, I do make points, I do say not all people with BP are the same. So, I do the best I can, really. Wheels. And maybe it's not good enough for some people, right? I mean, that could be. I mean, lots of people get angry with me, so it's obviously true sometimes. Wheels, I have a crap ton of PTSD triggers, but I'm an adult and I have to live in a world that's full of them with no warnings. The best thing we can do is learn to manage them and work through. Well, that's very true, and everybody's triggers are different in that regard. But yes, and I remember when I had BPD and I had triggers, and the key thing was learning about them, mapping them, understanding them, and then learning how to put a pause between. And there's a lot of deep healing required to take away the effect of like why people dissociate. It's very serious, right? Because it's a really severe trigger to something that was really traumatizing. And I want you to know, Tammy, that I know that I care about that and I respect that. But I think you're asking me to censor myself in ways that I can't. But I'm not intending to trigger people. I'm not like out here trying to do that on purpose or anything. And Allie, when people say I'm an empath, it makes people put up with things that they shouldn't because they're an empath and that's their job. Well, yes, that's one of the dark sides of that for sure, even if people think it's otherwise positive, you know. Um, it does make sense because that's where I believe a lot of people saying they're empaths are actually very codependent, but they don't like to hear that. JT, I think what's really great is the ability to know self and be able to know and make personal decisions on what works and boundaries. Very true. I mean, when Socrates said, "Know thyself," he wasn't kidding. That's like 2 words, biggest piece of wisdom ever. Like I was talking about on the last live stream about what self is and you know how important it is for people with PPD to find themselves and know themselves. People been hurt by anybody with any label to find themselves and know themselves, find themselves again more. And when we can, each of us be our own best friends and be independent and, you know, hold ourselves in positive regard, like ourselves, love ourselves in that healthy way, then we can relate in more healthy ways to each other. But we first have to have that relationship to self. It's very key. Um, yeah, Allie just saying that Wheels made a great point. I agree. And JT too. And Tammy said, when I came back to reality, you were very heatedly talking about this psychiatrist and again was triggered and overreacted to where the live went. Well, when you say heatedly, again, I think people do, and everybody, you know, I hear you. That's how you experience it. That's when I'm passionate. You know, that's me passionate. I'm not heated. I'm not angry. It's really passionate. But some people will mistake it for anger as much as, like, well, you said you thought I was heated. And I'm sure that if that's the way that you perceive my tone, and I mean this really respectfully, then that could be more triggering. And again, you know, that's not my intention. And yeah, I was just really passionate about what I was talking about with that psychiatrist. But, you know, other than that, I mean, I just think it was topical, but, you know, I'm sorry it caused you difficulty. And Allie, yes, it's very codependent, AJ. I agree 100%. And to be honest, I identified myself as an empath when I was younger. And then you said, I do think I was. Well, you know, highly sensitive person, maybe. I don't know. What does empath mean anyway? But you do think you said I think I was, but I became stronger and didn't hold on to the negative things or the codependent ways of that. I used it more in the sense I can use it for positive things. So that's cool. That's really good. That's very positive. And then you said, but I do understand how you feel about the whole empath thing, AJ. I respect your opinion. Well, I respect yours too. And it's not really how I feel about it, it's what I observe about it, right? Because at the end of the day, many people, they just, all those people don't watch my videos, but many people that, you know, they would come to this, and somebody else on the stream, I think, was here briefly and left. I don't know if they left, but they haven't said anything else. Because I think I've seen them before and they definitely identify as an empath. Well, that's okay. You know, I'm not trying to change anybody. If that's that person's opinion, and that's how a lot of people feel. Where I'm coming from is in observing this from a psychological perspective. I think there's a lot of danger to that, taking on that term or label or defining oneself that way, because it seems to override a lot of other things that people, you know, need to identify themselves with also as part of who they are and knowing themselves. And I think, like you said, Allie, it means people stay in abusive situations a lot longer, however that fits together. So it's not really what I feel, it's more what I've been thinking about and observing. And I see a lot of professionals out there. And there's one on YouTube, I don't know. She wrote, I can't remember what book she wrote, but she's written a book. But she's all up in the empath stuff. It's like somehow, somewhere along the line, as is Dr. Romney, as is many, you know, I just can't think of the other lady's name. I'm not saying anything negative about them, but I think this narrative being forwarded the way it is I just don't think it's like it might be helpful for somebody, but it has an equally dark side for other people in so many different ways. That's what I'm observing. And it's taken on a life of its own now. Almost like the definition for some people of empath would be, it means I've been abused by a narcissist, so I'm an empath. Which I don't think that's necessarily healthy. That's just my opinion, right? Like there's no definitive answer to this, right? Allie, I do agree with you, AJ, definitely. I think if you are an empath, can be a part of your identity, but not your whole self. But that's what I would say, Allie. When I use the word argue, I mean in a debate sense, right? Not fight with people. I was going to say that would be what I would put forward. I should use that language instead. That's the biggest problem with it is people identify so much with being a quote empath unquote that it becomes like an identity substitute of sorts. Like they're not experiencing the rest of the self in them. And also, it does set people up to continue to normalize and have a fawning response often to abuse and staying there longer. And this narrative is sort of like, I mean, it's not, I don't know how, it's not brand new, but it's not all that old. And I just think it has its dangerous side to it for sure. And JT, the one benefit, and there are many, AJ, of your lives is that if it causes issues for someone, they can leave for a time and come back and watch it again after you upload. Well, that's true. But I appreciate that Tammy is explaining what happened for her, and that's okay too. And but yeah, I mean, I really do care about what Tammy said, but I realized, and then just a minute ago, you see, I did change my language. So there are times when I'll get to a word and go, wait a minute, no, I really rather would use this word. And so sometimes I will do that, and sometimes I don't do that because, well, I did, I think that's what the case is with most people, right? So, like when I'm working with a client, for example, oh yes, very, very aware and very careful of word choice. But when I'm here, like, this is not a substitute for therapy. This is not a substitute for coaching. And I come here with, yeah, that I'm a mental health professional, but I come here sometimes more in that role, and I'm going to stick more to that structure probably a lot with the information in the beginning and that people have questions and a little bit of comments. But today I just thought I would do it sort of the other way. And so that means I'm also here as a person. And it's really hard to mix those two things. Like, I don't find it difficult, but I think other people, some people might find it difficult. And not to pick on you at all, Tammy, but what you said about, you kind of said something about, well, I'm a mental health professional and I'm saying I don't care. And it wasn't a broad statement of not caring. And again, it was, I would never say that to somebody in a session, right? So this isn't a session, and I'm a human being. And so, and it was a specific thing that I said that back to that was not about everything in general. So, but I don't mean to go back over that because I don't want to do that. That was just, the recent example of, but I do often take time, and I was careful even when I was talking about the psychiatrist, but more to the point, the issues and the reasons why that came up, which I won't go back over. But I took great care to try to not say things that would have been demeaning of her, and maybe I didn't 100% succeed, but I was trying to be careful with my language in terms of I wasn't taking it personally. She seemed to be taking things personally. And where did the academic debate in the middle go? So I was trying to be careful with my words. And maybe as a human being, I could have been more careful. I don't know. I guess I'll watch it back and see. I mean, I don't usually watch it, but I can watch that part back. But, sometimes after a live stream, I can watch a part back and go, oh man, I could have said that better. Or I could, because I'm human, right? And I'm here as a human. I'm not here in a professional capacity. So otherwise, I'd have to be really much more careful for sure. Not that I'm uncareful, but I think hopefully people know what I mean. Ellie, um, you said because I find when people claim to be an empath, they think they have to stay in toxic relationships, not just with narcissists, but even an alcoholic or someone else, and that they are the one to fix. Well, yes, which when you put it like that, isn't that describing codependency? And by the way, I think today, I could be wrong, but my view on this is people that are alcoholic, it doesn't come out of an ether. It's unlikely to be genetic. It's when people fall into a pattern of escapism that happens to involve alcohol. Or the same could be said of drugs. Whereas I think in the past, it was just thought, well, we don't know why this person is an alcoholic, as if they didn't have any emotional challenges, right? So, but that's interesting what you said because Ali, in my view, it kind of came full circle around to indicating codependency more than quote empath unquote. Now, and I'm not saying that to you, right? But we're speaking generally here. And JT, different strategies are a bonus, definitely, yes. And Ali said, instead of focusing on their healing journey, which they truly need, because they're focusing too much on others. Yes, and that is really kind of one of the, cornerstone definitions of codependency, self-abandonment. And there really is such a thing, I think empathy has become for some people, unbeknownst to them, likely consciously, a defense. And because it ceases to be healthy empathy after the overextension or when it's too much. And a person is not only being abused by someone else, but they're abandoning themselves and hurting themselves in identifying with the abuser. And having too much, any empathy is too much for an abuser, actually. And then, so there is, I think, really what needs to be added to this narrative much more is that there is healthy empathy, and anything claimed by empaths is not, in my opinion, in that realm of healthy empathy, or potentially might not be for more people than not. And then you said, yes, it really is similar to codependent, AJ. Well, in fact, I would assert that most people identify with as being an empath are codependent. Um, which these are all terms that mean something. So it's what's more important than labels are people's experience, right? And Robert, I agree with the your view on empaths, AJ. People are really running with the idea that they're empathic people. Empathy just might be that common in Western culture. Well, empathy is being overused. Like empathy is important, but empathy is being weaponized. Empathy is being used as a defense. Empathy is people that a lot of people, the empath narrative, they're in denial. And for some people, it's like a special status of victim. It seems that they feel that way. Um, or I've had it said to me that way. I can just say vaguely. Rob, thank you, AJ, for the book recommendation. Oh, you're welcome on CPTSD. I just ordered it on Amazon. Oh, good for you. Do you feel it's only talk therapy that can get someone through this? Um, Well, there's many different actually modalities and things that can be done in therapy that like I incorporate when I work with clients. It's not always just about talking. But yeah, I think working with someone can really help you because it's supportive and depending, I can't say more than that, Rob, because I don't know you, but for people what happens is there's pain to process, and it's important to have it witnessed. And for some people, they need, in inner child healing work to really have that put outside of self to another person. And my role in that case with clients is to then be the reparative parent, be the parent that they weren't, and or if it's it's not going to just be a cluster B partner while you have those issues, Rob, but that probably did not help. And so, in working with someone, you get your pain and your process, you get help and support, and you get that witnessed, and you also get the feedback of reparation that is so important in that process, and more than that. But that's just a general statement, because I use a lot of different techniques, and then people can go and in between sessions practice those on their own. And then in inner child healing and working on CPTSD and the inner critic and all the other aspects of that and what the flashbacks are about and what the trauma was, I just recommend people don't try to do it all by themselves. It's very difficult. So the book is very helpful, but I will also caution you, Rob, that when you are having the flashbacks that you are having right now, you need to be careful with the book. There's a lot of people, some people can just read the book, but if you got active CPTSD, you might find yourself being triggered in places in the book. So just see how that goes. But that's another reason why, if you were in, support working with somebody would be helpful, because the book itself is really a healing journey, but it can also be a triggering one. And Robert said, quote, empathy might not be that common. Um, oh, okay. So you said, that's what I wondered if you meant. In your other comment, I'll reread it. You said, I agree with your view on empaths, AJ. People are really running with the idea that they're empathic people. Empathy just might not be that common in Western culture. Yes. And you said, so people feel the need um, to this unique identity label. Ah, it's well put, Robert. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And then you said, me being surrounded by jerks made me differentiate as being different when I was just being a moral human. Well, and actually, Robert, that just to be helpful, I hope, differentiate what you're describing there isn't really differentiation, but I understand you're meaning that you were seeking a way to be different. But that doesn't encompass what self differentiation really is. So, because the more that you're healing, excuse me, healing and working on your process, the more your self differentiation is like, again, people get more results in therapy with this, but it's about letting go of old roles. I mean, part of it, and and not having the same responses to others, be they toxic, be they this, that, or the other label, that were the same as those who originally triggered you and hurt you in your family of origin. But I understand what you're saying, but I just wanted to point out that it's a differentiation of a sort, but not the actual healing of self differentiation. That's a little bit more of a process, I think, as to what you said there. Allie, I think people get terms confused with an empath and spirituality. Well, I wonder, with all due respect, if you've been doing that here, Allie, because I'm not sure. I don't know. See, I always learned an empath was someone who had felt that they are super sensitive, but also that they are spiritually sensitive. Yeah, but some of that narrative, I'm not saying all of it, gets into like really new age or woo woo stuff, like the esoteric nature of it all, which some people, which hundreds of thousands or millions of people are into that. But I don't ascribe to that, and I sort of have a different view. So the more that this esoteric spirituality is forwarded, dare I say, I believe, is the one world government, one world orders idea to one world religion, which is blasphemy, in my opinion. But hey, that's a touchy subject, and everybody's going to believe what they want to believe on that one. But I think that the new age movement and the woo woo stuff that's really going way out there is encouraging this narrative also, that it is about super spiritual something or other. But again, it's invoked specialness, in my opinion. It's because spirituality is a very sacred thing to people, but people need to know that, I mean, nobody's more special with their spirituality than the next person. So I think a lot of special invocation comes along with the equation of empath with spirituality, like, and the esoteric woo woo stuff, which, I mean, people swear by it. I think it's a cultish nonsense, but that's just me. And I don't want to put that out there as a judgment, because I know that so many people are into the other, and that's their right to do, right? Robert, the empath label was like permission to be a good person but become an obligatory identity. Well, yeah, and I would also add to that, and for many, many people, remain a victim of abuse. It's like the word empath may be the gateway to, but this is, oh, wait a minute. Okay, just had a glitch there. The OBS software goes, I'm not working, and then it went, I'm working again. I don't know if it probably buffered at your end, and I'm thinking, what did I just say? Because it might have got interrupted. Did it get interrupted? I don't know. The empath label was like permission to be a good person, but became an obligatory identity. Yeah, and I think it's that obligatory identity of special status. Yes, this is what I was saying when it, in case it didn't come through, it might have. I'm sorry if it's a repeat. That leads people into many people who think they're empaths with this obligatory identity, it leads them into more and more Stockholm syndrome, more and more over identification with the abuser, and ending up staying in abusive relationships longer because the empathy that they're giving away, which is harmful now, they're not seeking harm reduction themselves. They're banning themselves. They're identifying with the abuser and wanting to rescue and fix the abuser. And so it I think it engenders more Stockholm syndrome in many people. I can't say everybody, but there's got a really dark side to it, this empath thing. And I don't think that that's what professionals that they're talking about it are talking about. But I don't know if they've looked at it in that full circle way, because I see the other. Well, I'm not saying I'm the only one, but to me, I'm observing the other side of it. And then yes, I experience this sometimes with clients, but I can't go there. So, but that also informs me about why I have the opinion I do. And I think that's a really good comment. Your comments are really helpful, Robert. Thank you. Um, Allie, like being able to speak to ghosts or feels them and such. Well, good gracious, I'm not going there. And I'm not saying I don't believe in ghosts, right? But yeah, uh, not hitching my wagon to that journey. And you said that's what I always thought an empath was. Well, I'm sure in New Age esoteric speak, you're probably not that far off. Probably that's not the whole enchilada, but it would go something like that. And I just say it that way because I don't listen to those people. Um, there's a lovely one on YouTube. Have you seen her? The psychopathic one, who's all that spiritual guru, New Age psychopathic. Hello. I really think it's I shouldn't say too much because it's just my opinion. But the esoteric is the, well, to me anyways, as a Christian, is the juxtaposed wrong, absolute wrong way to go. But I can't put that on everybody else because I don't have any special secrets just because I'm a Christian and I'm not a fundamentalist or whatever. And I believe, like, I don't think that Christianity is the only way. But the esoteric new age quantum physics stuff it's out there, and it might have something to it, but it also has a lot of magical thinking to it. I think a lot of mental health professionals would challenge that there's anything relatively mentally healthy in that. Wills, it didn't get interrupted, AJ. You're good. Okay, so I repeated myself. That's okay, but I didn't know because it just cut out here, cut out, and so I didn't know. So, but thank you. Um, Robert, I heard of broadcast delusions, yes, and made me think if I was projecting a narrative onto people that were giving me somatic reactions, like, quote, I feel their anger, unquote. Well, that's really interesting because that would be in the mix for some people. Can't say for all, but that's fascinating, Robert. Yes, broadcast delusions. And it made you think if you were projecting a narrative onto people that was giving you a somatic reaction, like quote, I feel their anger. That happens a lot. I think that happens for a lot of people. So then there's an aspect of this narrative for some people's experience that will be somewhat delusional. I like that you brought up broadcast delusions because I knew somebody, I told this story before, so I won't get into it, right? When the Mormons were hoovering around me and wouldn't go away many years ago. And they send you this Instafriend. I didn't need an Instafriend, thank you. And she was very much troubled. Like she was very much emotionally unstable. And I kept asking her about her beliefs with what they were trying to inculcate me with, and she was very hesitant to talk about, how she found Jesus, or what her story was. And so I would let it go, and it would come back up. And one day I asked her again, and she said, well, and before she answered me, she looked to both sides as if like somebody out there was watching. And I was like, well, that's different. And we were just both in my living room, nobody else was there. And she said, well, even, I remember her saying this, even the bishop said that what I said, he seemed troubled by what I said, or something to that effect. And I'm thinking, oh my, what's this going to be? Well, she had broadcast delusions. She said that Jesus spoke to her in the commercials of TV shows. And so she was having delusions. And I guess even the bishop, I mean, I didn't give a reaction on my face when she said that, but maybe the bishop did. So that was her experience anyway. But she was a very, she meant well, but she was inculcated by that church because they prey, PREY, on people that might have the kind of mental health issues she had, which I don't know what they were, but she definitely had what you said there, Robert, broadcast delusions, which I'm not saying she was an empath or anything. No, I'm not connecting those two things. Allie, oh Lord, I haven't heard or seen that, AJ. Laugh out loud. That's, I don't know what you mean by that word there. Oh, maybe you're saying woo woo, okay, but that starts with a W, like O, probably not J's, because if that's what I don't know, Allie, what that means. Robert, stream was good, just nice time, okay. Wheels, when people call me an empath, I get really uncomfortable. Well, I mean, there's a video somewhere in a video I said I was a freaking empath a while ago. I hope it's an older one because, like, I didn't really mean it. I had a lapse of judgment for my, but yes, I think it's an older one I came across recently because lots of people are finding my older ones and older videos, and they are commenting, and then I go over and I'm like, yeah, I don't even remember what I said in this one, and so, and then you said, when I hear quote empath unquote, I think unhealed codependency, and sometimes something a little darker. Well, and of course, it could be different for vastly, different people. And what else was I thinking there? Um, can't remember now. And Tammy, I think people confuse empathy and compassion sometimes. Well, yeah, I mean, we're not hearing as much about compassion these days, are we? I think compassion used to be the word used most often until empath came along. And you said compassion is a good thing. Yes. My opinion is that empathy can tend to cross boundaries, and like you said, self abandonment. Well, yes, and it can be so given outward, sometimes with projective identification or projections, which isn't limited to BPD. People can project. People can, if they don't catch their own projections, anybody can project. And so I think that it cannot, I think largely for a lot of people, it could also be that they are feeling a lot inside and projecting that onto someone else and then thinking they're feeling exactly what that person is feeling. But you make a great point there, Tammy. Thank you so much. That's fascinating because people are, I don't know if empathy is getting confused with compassion, but it's an overused term and it's now got stuck in this empath label, which in part, I don't know, but in part there can be a dark side and a very damaging side too. So, yeah, very good point because we don't see the word compassion much anymore. And empathy is important, but like I said, yeah, it's over, but people are hurting themselves and thinking that's not healthy empathy. So I agree. I mean, compassion, people need not to overextend too much compassion as well. But yes, compassion. It's all about the balance, right? Of not abandoning self to feel something that either you are feeling for the other or that you're feeling and the other person might be feeling. But it all kind of comes back to a rather codependent picture of people trying to fix and change other people's feelings or holding their feelings. And that's just really not healthy more times than not. Robert, to Wheels, thanks for wording it like that. You nailed it. Yes, I think it was really well said too. Allie, no, bad. Okay, well, I can't say that because of the other connotation and the way that the AI would hear it and be very, very angry with me if AI has a temper. So I can't say that. Sorry, what you're typing there because it sounds like something else, right? Spelt just a little differently. Wheels, bad that, yes, is just bad energy from what I understand. Okay, but that word itself would be like terrible to for me to say on AI is all I'm saying, right? Because it would have a whole different connotation. Yeah. So I can't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And Allie said, yes, exactly, Tammy. Good wording. Yes, that was a really insightful comment. Very helpful. And I think very true. Because, I often think about compassion and self-compassion for people and, clients. And someone on the last live stream I was talking about, maybe I did say have more empathy for himself, but I hope I said more compassion. Be nurturing to themselves, I think I said also. So have to watch out for that too, because language has this insidious way of coming out of your mouth when it's not even what you mean, but it's all over the place. Do you know what I mean? Um, and Wheels, I got you, AJ, and don't want to say that out loud. Yes, exactly. We can't. I mean, you're not in a position to, but I can't. So I have to be very careful. And of course, when I saw that, all I could think of was what that sounds like, right? Which is not the way it's being used here. I know that, but I haven't heard that expression actually to mean bad energy. That's interesting. I mean, somebody else might have used it, and you might have used it before too, Allie, but I just kind of never knew what it meant because I wasn't familiar with it. So I think, yeah, it's really interesting that. So I think really just to go back to the more to the topic for a second, I think that people with BPD that think they're empaths, they're really describing their hypersensitivity, which is um, largely driven by, I think, their pain, and they're trying to make sense out of their pain, and then sometimes projecting or projective identification of that pain onto others. But while I'm saying that, I'm not saying that people with BPD are not able to pick up on how some people feel sometimes, for sure. I think they very much are. But I'm not sure that that's always an empathic process, if that makes sense. Allie, do you think that some codependents are narcissistic, AJ? Well, you know what, Allie? I'm kind of re-reviewing that right now and thinking about it. And I'm not watching YouTube videos about it, but I'm trying to find other sourced information. And of course, that wouldn't be psychiatry either. But I'm wondering because I stand for things here that I really believe in, and sometimes yes, I have facts that I know are facts, and sometimes no, I just really am. I think in the absence of facts, like with psychiatry, for example, I don't believe when they give us pieces of narratives of things that don't aren't proven. But as far as codependents, do I think that some codependents are narcissistic? No, I think that I know there's a couple of YouTubers out there saying that a lot right now and throwing that back and forth. But that's largely done by people who are narcissists. And some people who are narcissists or high traits of narcissism, if they haven't been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, but they might well fit it, um, might think that they're also codependent, or might, yeah. And I don't know anymore because backing through the monkey into the wrench like he always, or the monkey wrench into the whole mix. What am I saying? When he started talking about, narcissists are the flip side of codependency or whatever, because, and or they're codependent, I'm not sure what he said, because they're dependent on supply, which I think is asinine. Are they dependent on supply? Yeah, they are, but that's not codependency. It's a dependence. It's not the same thing. So, but I'm rethinking it only because it's so popular out there for everybody to throw them together. But I don't think they belong together. And then again, too, Allie, to what you asked, how do you mean that when you use the word narcissistic? Because here's another thing that's getting clear as mud by the day out here, like online and maybe in life for people. What is being narcissistic mean? Because it's a cover for a lot of narcissists who might be acting as if or believe they're codependents. And covert narcissists do that well, but so do overt narcissists. And they do it unabashedly. But the thing about it is, what does narcissistic mean? Because it's a place where narcissists, a lot on YouTube and in other places and in life, hide as if they're codependents. They'll say they're codependents when they really are narcissists. So when is somebody just being narcissistic? What does that mean? I think it's an overused term and applied way too much to things that would be better described with other language. Like that person is kind of like not hearing me right now, or that person is um, being disrespectful, or all kinds of things that somebody might be doing that I think people might label, well, they're narcissistic, which is not really to say they're narcissists, right? So I'm giving it much more thought as I continue to watch what's going on in line. Like in general, I'm not aiming at anybody specifically with that statement. Allie, like by them wanting to change or fix people's behavior. Um, oh, that's interesting. No, it's not narcissistic. It's people that are hurting also have their own unhealthy relational pattern, which is within codependency, that they're externalizing and trying to get away from their own pain. They learned this in childhood, though, by overgiving, caretaking, enabling. And it becomes a pattern for them that they need to bring to consciousness to work on changing. So, but there's no altruism. Like I have a video on that because somebody commented on the channel ages ago. They thought they were altruistic and blah, blah, blah because they were this overgiving, wonderful, magnanimous codependent. No, there's no altruism in it. So there's some self interest that might be subconscious. There's the need to get back. There's the subconscious seeking of inner child woundedness reparation through the person with BPD or NPD, as the person with BPD is trying to seek identity through the codependent. But no, I don't think that codependents are narcissistic. I think they just don't realize the self interested nature of their giving and what they're trying to get because it started in childhood. And that pattern is often locked away in the wounded inner child and not in the conscious mind of people with codependency. And they often don't understand why they're overgiving. And some people with codependency can be extremely passive aggressive and they can be very controlling and but they mean well and they can do things like give and then like yell and blow at somebody because they're frustrated because nothing came back. So not everybody with codependency is just placidly passive all the time. But I don't think it's narcissistic. No, I think there's YouTubers out there saying that now too, but that's not correct. People are throwing that word around. Oh, it's not. It's just overused, overblown, and misappropriated way too often. So it gets clear as mud. And that's where people have to be able to have discernment to read between the lines what's really going on when somebody's throwing that word around about codependency. Because I've seen a few people do it, and frankly, they're narcissists. But I don't think they're narcissists because they did that. It's way other things. Um, and I'm sorry that I have a propensity for being able to spot them and watch them out themselves because I grew up with narcissists, right? So I don't think everybody's a narcissist or anything. Allie, like by them wanting to change or fix people's behavior. No, it's not narcissistic. It's not always other focused, but yeah. Albert, hey there. Do people with BPD try to hurt people they discard? Of course, I don't discard like narcissists, but I give up. They ghost, but what's the difference? Do people with BPD? Well, some do, and some don't. Some people with quad BPD are so hurting and in such a terrible place internally, they have to get away because it's about survival. It's a defense of survival again. They're feeling engulfed, brings up the anxiety of the death instinct and all kinds of things. So they're not doing it to hurt people. But then there could be some people with BPD absolutely doing it to hurt people. So that goes again to the difference that not all people with BPD are the same. not all their behavior or reasons for they do like ghosting or discarding. It's not always the same with everybody. So that's the best answer I can give to that. So for people, sometimes it's hard for you to know then if the person with BPD in your life is doing it to hurt you, or if it's really their defense and what they're doing and they're not aware of how it's hurting you. But you see, at the end of the day, when you're being hurt and that happens to you, what you need to focus on is how you're feeling and what's happening to you, not what's their motivation or intent, right? Because either way, you're getting hurt. JT, my experience was they were dependent. Yes, well, that's exactly it. They're not codependent. They're dependent on supply. And so that's where Vaknin just threw in another thing out there. And by the way, I don't mean to, but I have to go back to the psychiatrist once more because one of the resources the links that to justify her video, one of the other ones I clicked on, I had to tell her this, but it went to a Psychology Today blog of a person I do not like at all, a professional. Um, I don't know if they're a PhD or a social worker, but I don't like their blog. I don't like their viewpoint at all. And they're in the pseudoscience up to the yin yang. And so their whole blog that I got from that psychiatrist, you got the link. This person's whole blog, though they're a professional, shame on them for this. That's all I can say. They were quoting ad infinitum Bachman. So, amid other kinds of communication, I just said to her, "Hey, this link here. Do you realize that the source of it is a malignant narcissist psychopath?" Now, it doesn't mean he doesn't know some things, but she thanked me for telling her that because again, these things actually matter. And I don't want to get into any more about Bachman here because I don't. But I'll just say I've been online. He might have gone on a few months ahead of me. We've both been online since 1995. We've crossed paths before. Hopefully, he's forgotten I exist. And he's rather impossible to forget he exists. But the thing is, I don't have any ill will toward the guy or anything, but he is what he is. And I guess I tend not to want to forget that. But I've just seen iterations of how he works and what his cycles are, and I'll just leave it vague like that. And he's in another peak of an iteration of something. I don't know what's true or not true. And what's happened with all the other iterations over the last 95, what is that, 25 years? I don't know. Is that he gets caught in the fraudulence of something, and then it kind of goes away and he carries on, and then the next iteration of all this credentialed importance starts all over again. And I don't know what's true. I just know that every iteration prior has been one way or the other exposed and debunked. And now he's at it again. So, I mean, the guy is uber intelligent, but, and I'm not going to say you throw out everything that he says, but people got to be really discerning. And I know even when I watch him, I'm like, oh my God, what is this? And then he might say a sentence that makes sense. And then I'm like, I don't know what the rest of this is. So I think people have to really exercise the grain of salt with that. But I wouldn't look, he knows a lot of stuff. I'm not going to say he's wrong about everything. Of course not. He's not wrong. He's not wrong about tons. So he's correct about tons, I'm sure. But the thing is, then he veers off from that. And sometimes there's no warning. Where's the beer? Where's the facts? And then he does use a lot of archaic references. And then he puts inferences into the references. So there's that. And then sometimes he's just so dead on, like really accurate. So is he a reputable source for that blogger who's a professional or for that? I don't know, but the psychiatrist happened to think rather not. Who knows? And I'm not, I'm just saying because he originated this thing about they're dependent on supply, so they're codependent or whatever. Because otherwise, it's not like I want to talk about him all day or ever, really. I don't have any really big feelings about him one way or the other, right? Except for some disinformation and that everything gets reduced to narcissism or pathological something or other at the end of the day, pretty much. Although he has the odd video where it's not like that. And out to see. You don't discard people. And I hear you, I mean, when I had BPD, I never ghosted or discarded anybody either. See, everybody with BPD is not the same. And not everybody with BPD will hoover. Not everybody with BPD just discards or ghosts people. And it's really important to keep saying that too, I believe. Um, well, Ali, a lot is confusing a lot of the time. I think stuff confuses me too. Like I think a lot about things, but I don't think that like I said, I still haven't done this video because I can't find the book. But I have been busy, so I haven't looked for it because I don't think much of it. The woman, the professional from Ireland, who has a long last name, very little presence on YouTube, not a regular YouTuber or anything, who has a book that I can't remember. I'm gonna have to look this up after tonight. I'm sick of saying this so vaguely. Um, and she says that if you're with a narcissist, you are, quote, a co-narcissist, unquote. Well, I like to give her a kick in the pants, figuratively speaking. Like, what's that about? So, see, it just keeps getting worse, I think. Because that's blame the victim if ever I've heard it. You're with a narcissist, you're a co-narcissist. Get out of here. Where does it come from? Robert, I'm in a Facebook group with 4 million, oh my God, users called empaths. How do you survive over there? Old souls and introverts. Some people post, have a sub message of mental stress. 4 million users. That doesn't surprise me. Because, by the way, for everything I say about the pseudoscience of psychiatry with the hegemony of Big Pharma, just know that there are also millions of people on Facebook who've been damaged irreparably and or who are trying to get off the psych meds who know this truth in their own lives, what I'm talking about. So there are millions over on Facebook to that too. But that sounds like, in a way, Robert, a very interestingly fascinating group, and in another way, not really, if you know what I mean. Um, I would be interested in the old souls and the introverts, but not so much the empaths, unless they think they're all that together, which maybe they are. Um, well, that's really interesting. And wow, 4 million users. See, I don't kind of like the message board thing, the Facebook group thing. It's like you can get sucked into the vortex, right? But that's really interesting, Robert. Thanks for sharing that. Out to sea. But if someone abandons me, I lash out. Well, yes, that can happen. I understand from your perspective why that would happen because that is like re-traumatizing you, because you obviously, I would think, I shouldn't say obviously, but have an abandonment wound, and so that's until you learn. Maybe you're in therapy, I don't know, but if you get in therapy, you can learn more about how to take care of yourself with that so that you don't have that reaction. But yeah, that's a very instinctual, primal, related to a lot of pain reaction. JT, I mean, the NPD was dependent. Yeah, but dependent on, well, I'm thinking dependent on supply. Did you mean something different? Um, because they might have some dependency needs like supply, but it's not codependence. Because what I always say about people who say that codependence can be narcissist or narcissist can be codependent, well, I always would ask this question: when's the last time a narcissist overgave to you? When's the last time a narcissist, other than in targeting, when's the last time a narcissist, and they don't do this then anyway, was caretaking for you? When's the last time that a narcissist actually like wanted to help you to fix something about yourself? When's the last time they were empathic and understanding with you, other than in targeting and love bombing, which they don't even do half of this in? So that's where I can't see my way to saying that a narcissist could be codependent, among other things. And Allie said, "Okay, thank you so much for explaining that, AJ. Because I have to be honest, I did get a little confused at times. Well, there's a lot of swirling information out there, and even I'm not saying. I mean, there's lots of great information out there, and then there's information here and there that's really inaccurate, and it could get confusing for anybody, I think. Robert, maybe a body response, and some are fine tuned to their bodies, like spatial intelligence, unfortunate maladaptation of an intelligence type. Yeah, or otherwise known as trauma that is housed in the body and therefore, the somatic flashback or the somatic expression of trauma. So I don't know that there's a fine-tuned, with people who've been traumatized, how would they know a trauma response from a quote, fine-tuned, unquote, response? Um, Spatial intelligence. Well, that's something I don't have. I mean, I know the word spatial can be used in different ways. I wouldn't say I have no spatial intelligence, but I don't really like think about that a lot because I have no spatial ability, that's for sure. Like when I look at a space and think a couch will fit, forget it. Um, and of course lack of spatial ability and math. But I don't know how much weight or really what people mean by spatial intelligence. So I would have to look into that a little more. But I think it might well be, the somatized experience of trauma that's held within the body. Because even infants, when they're traumatized, will have tracks of that trauma in the body because everything affects the infant on a biological level. There's the brain isn't finished developing. There's not the cognitive understanding, and of course no verbal skills. And I remember in my recovery when I went back to pre-verbal, precognitive pain, so primal, so much pain, so much grieving, I had no idea. And then I got some idea what it was connected to by the where in my body would things get tight and or hurt, and or spasm. Well, I was having the pre-verbal, the grief of the pre-verbal, precognitive, obvious trauma. So don't forget how much trauma is held in the body in many cases. And that's why somatic therapy and many other things are also very helpful in any eclectic mix or and modality or that method itself. Allie, but can codependence be selfish in a way? Oh, yes, codependence can be selfish. Yes. There's a selfishness to codependency often, but it's something that they're not really aware of more often than not. But yes, they can be selfish. And I think that's a much better word than narcissistic, right? Because they don't mean the same thing. I guess I'm just trying to understand a bit more. Well, yeah, they can definitely be selfish because they're overgiving, and maybe every codependent isn't aware of this, but people overgive because they need something back. And it might not be that clear cut, like I didn't give X to get Y back, but they're hoping for some reciprocity and mutuality on some level. And Robert said, "Oh no, I read that part. Yes, um, Allie, I guess I'm just trying to. Oh, I read that too. Sorry, um, Allie. I guess what I mean by this is by them overgiving so much and stuff, it becomes a little controlling. Well, yes, it does, is in a sense because they want something they probably will never get from someone else. Yes, and what they want, more to the point, and don't realize consciously often, is they have a wounded inner child. Codependency develops in childhood, the pattern of this unhealthy relational style itself, and they want something that they need to get into therapy for to do, which I help clients with, to heal the inner child from something they didn't get from a parent. So that's the connection there, and but people aren't always aware of that. And Robert said the group has some sweet wisdom, so I stay. Interesting psych board too. Oh, that's good. Well, yeah, I'm sure there'd be a lot of wisdom there and interesting things, and amid other things. But I just think the size of that sounds like I just get overwhelmed by like all that information sitting in front of me. So and Lord knows if I were to go there and be in that group, I'd end up with observing and analyzing and looking for trends and patterns and ugh. So Allie, thank you. So I was right. Yes, you were. I just didn't want to say too much because I didn't want to hurt anyone. Well, it's something that is subconscious in a lot of people with codependency, and where they might intersect with that coming to consciousness is after they've been in a relationship with somebody that's a lot like a wounding parent. Now, it's not always that they had people with codependency don't always have a cluster B parent, but often, if I had a nickel for every time clients say, well, or they come to realize, and they'll say it, I don't say anything, I married my mother, I married my father, or the guy I'm with is my father, or the woman I'm with is my mother, in the sense of the inner child is seeking out familiarity on a subconscious level. So people with codependency don't often know this until unless they go through like a really painful experience in adulthood with somebody with BPD or NPD or worse, and then they're in such pain, etc. They have to seek some healing and recovery, and more people are talking about it online, and people have been for a while, and so then they make the connection, and people that will do the work, then that's the way to healing codependency, which isn't something that people have to like maintain forever either. So I'm seeing people out there saying they're codependent and they have to be in recovery actively all the time. It might be true for them for other reasons, but people can heal codependency. And again, we're never perfect, but can heal codependency and really catch themselves. Like I know myself with friends, somebody might say something to me and there's no hidden agenda. And I might think, oh, I could do, but what I've learned to do is like, no, 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 no. Because if somebody doesn't ask me for help, now it depends what it is, but like, I don't want to, I used to be an over offerer, right? And maybe people didn't even want the help I was offering. So that's what I still have to watch out for, but it doesn't happen that often anymore. But if it does, then I'm just really mindful about it. I catch it, I close my mouth, and I don't make the offer. And if somebody asks me for help, depends what it is, and then I assess whether or not I think I can help, or is it something they should be able to do for themselves, that kind of thing. But I don't have really friends who do that kind of thing. So, not that it would be to that level of that if they asked me for help, it would be something they could do themselves, kind of thing. So, recovery from codependency can become a place from which we move forward and we don't live in codependent cycles of relating, because it's like healing that pattern as much as people with BPD have to do a little bit more, but heal what's become a maladaptive pattern of relating. So, people that are saying you have to be in recovery and you have to stay, and Codependence Anonymous is so important. Well, no, it really isn't. And I've had the Codependence 12 Steps on my first website since 1995. Not that it's not buried under the algorithm now too, but the thing is, whatever people think might help. But these days we hear people telling people with BPD to go to 12-step meetings, like that's going to help BPD. No, it's not going to help BPD recovery. I mean, if they have a drinking problem, addiction, or something on top of it, but that methodology is just, I'm not going to say totally outdated. Some of it's valuable, but you encounter so many toxic people in those groups too. So it depends. I went to Coda a lot of years ago, and I went to Al-Anon because my parents are also alcoholics, and I found it was really too toxic an environment to be in because the meetings weren't even functioning properly. But that was just a couple of meetings I went to. Like, I'm not saying they're all like that. Um, Ali said, sometimes I just don't understand why sometimes codependents stay with the abusive person and sometimes even take their side. Though I understand its patterns, but on the outside it's baffling. Well, yeah, because it's what's going on in their subconscious. So it doesn't make sense in the here and now. It doesn't make sense to somebody's age or, you know, whatever, but it's being driven by a wounded inner child from their subconscious. So it's hard to make sense out of that when you're not the person feeling what they're feeling or feeling what they're not aware they're feeling. Out to sea. Would it be bad to stay in a codependent relationship? Well, I wouldn't use words like good or bad, but I would say it's it's not it's not the healthiest thing, and it depends. I would always say it's best for people to continue their healing journey and to heal from codependency and or BPD, because people with BPD have codependency also, and really to get to know yourself, have that healthy relationship with yourself first, build that, and then yeah, start over and find somebody who's done the work that you've done and who's healthier. Because codependent relationships, they just aren't healthy. Could some of them dysfunction in a way that kind of works for both people? Maybe, but and to each their own. But it would never be a choice that I would make myself. So, Allie, I understand it's. Oh yeah, I read that. Sorry. I have trouble being more direct and honest with people sometimes because I'm afraid people are as sensitive as me and will melt down from the slightest hint of criticism. Well, yeah, and that's maybe you experiencing others as, like you said, you're feeling. And also, it might be you experiencing others as where the genesis or where your feelings, your sensitivity originates from in childhood too. And that, so that is something that means you're still having a rather fawning codependency response to some trauma. And I understand what you're saying. I understand that, yes. That so you're kind of holding other people's feelings too, and you're afraid that you'll hurt them, so you're taking responsibility for their feelings, and then that's blocking you from being able to be direct or honest, because see, you're responsible for your feelings and they're responsible for theirs. So Robert, somatic expressions of trauma is a good adage. I looked up the intelligence, quote, bodily kinetic intelligence, unquote. Oh, well, that's interesting because I don't know, but kinetic would largely refer to energy, wouldn't it? And again, that would be what I was like. I didn't understand it in the way you put it forward, but that would be mostly what I think people can intuit and know about their own bodies, not necessarily other people's feelings and experiences. You think 12 step is bad even for stopping? No, no, not for stopping substances. No, I don't think it's bad for that. I just think it's not an answer for people with BPD, except for if also, like I just said, if they do have an addiction to alcohol or drugs. It's just about finding a group that's functional. So, but for people with like when I had BPD, I never had an addiction, right? I didn't. Well, there was a bit of a food one, but and I did go to, what was it, Overeaters Anonymous or something. I went there a few times, but they were just like having a hen party. It was kind of boring. And I noticed that the more I went there, and they were getting heavier and heavier. So I don't think the thing was working. But no, I didn't mean that at all. If somebody has an addiction to alcohol or drugs, those meetings and those steps, I think that's much more applicable. Absolutely. And maybe not the only thing to do, but very important. I think it's less important for codependence, actually, because there's other avenues of recovery and inner child healing work. But so no, I didn't mean what you thought I meant there. And I'm just not using your name because I noticed last time you took your comments away and you might again. So I'm just not using your name in case you do. And then I still look like I'm talking to air, but that's okay. Like in a replay. Um, Allie, is it possible to be in a narcissistic relationship and think you're codependent, but once you're out of it, you really aren't? Um, I don't really think so. I think I addressed that to a commenter's question in a video I did recently about, can codependency be relationship specific? I can't remember the whole title, but it's like maybe 2 or 3 videos ago or something. And I came to the conclusion it's unlikely. So I don't know for sure, right? But I think it's unlikely that somebody would not have, because even the commenter who thanked me after, because people don't always agree with video when I do the comment, but the commenter even agreed and thanked me after. But there was something in the comment that kind of was conflicting with their assertion statement that they believed that it was possible to just be codependent in a relationship with a person with BPD or a narcissist, and then not be codependent in other relationships. But I don't think so. And the difference would be that people may not be as, their codependency might not be as active if they're in a different kind of relationship. So anyway, if you want to check out that video, Ali, I don't remember what it's called. Sorry, I'm not being real helpful. And I should have said this way ages ago. I got to make sure to say it in the next video I do, just to remind people that I'm flipping up older videos. on the community tab in case people want to see more that's older, where in some of those videos I must have done a better job because I got a lot more views than some right now. Or is that the measure of a better job? Who knows? I don't really think so. And you said because I used to think I was codependent, and maybe I am, but for the most part, I do have pretty good boundaries and don't put up with a lot of crap. And also, you have BPD and not be codependent. Um, well, I think it's people that are more severely impacted by BPD or comorbid BPD NPD that might not be so codependent. But I think otherwise they kind of are synonymous because of the trauma response that codependency is, which is not to the degree of BPD. But then when people with BPD have that trauma and that response, it's going to include the codependency as well, if that makes any sense. That's the way that I put it together anyway. So I don't think it's relationship specific. But having said that, I will also say, unlike other YouTubers out there, and some more adamant about it than others, not every single person who has a relationship with somebody with BPD or a narcissist is codependent. Now, that's really controversial, but why do I say that? Because in all 30 years of working with clients, and maybe in those 30 years, I haven't actually counted, maybe it's like 10 or 15 or 20 people, but they absolutely were not codependent. So that's very hard to explain. But I wouldn't say so it might be 95 or 97% of people, but it's not 100% because there's very little in life that we can measure at 100%. So I always like to leave that wiggle room, but so that's why I'm saying I don't think, and I sort of went through the process of thinking about it in the video that I did in response to that comment. I don't know what it's called, sorry. Um, but on the thumbnail, you'll see something on the title, and then it was in the title. It will say codependency. What is it? Relationship specific codependency question mark. So if you want to look for it, it's in the title, but you'll see it on the thumbnail in gold lettering. That's all I can remember. I can't remember the top of the title. Um, well, that's okay to be full of questions, Allie. It's great. And you're very welcome. And JT, I've seen codependency maladapt to extremely stuck enabler. Yes. I don't know that's really a maladaptive thing. It's just part of a more severe degree of codependency for a lot of people. But which I'm not trying to correct you, JT. I'm just saying whichever way we say it, it's it's uh it's not uncommon with some people with codependency that they will be extremely stuck in the enabler role because they are extremely unaware of how they were abandoned and they're abandoning themselves. It's like they just can't stop it because it hasn't come to conscious awareness. So anyway, it's been a pleasure, and I hope the stream will be helpful to people, and I hope that there was a little contentious point there, but I think we worked that through, and I hope that will be helpful to people. And JT said yes, it's difficult to watch. Oh yes, when somebody's a stuck enabler, yes. And Tanya, yes, I'm not codependent and was with my narc ex for 16 years. They try hard to make someone who is independent to be codependent. Well, see, like then you would be what I said. You would be that exception. It might be 1 to 3% of people, but that encompasses a lot of people. I would never be comfortable to say, like so many adamantly are out there, that you were with a narcissist or a borderline ipso facto, you have to be a codependent. No, because there's no monolithic group, and I say really the percentage is high that people that have codependency, but it's not 100%. And so I totally hear you, and I believe you. And Robert, kinetic as in body move. Oh yes, of course. Sorry. I should remember that from friends that were studying that kind of stuff and to be phys ed teachers, etc. in university. Like karate pair can grapple without looking, or hockey goalie knows their net. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you for that explanation. Um, but that still doesn't, in my mind, help me at all with how anything to do with that would be people sensing other people's feelings. So I understand it within, when I played goal in not like ice hockey, I was not a goalie, but field hockey, of course, you got to have an idea where you are because it's a bigger, the goalpost wider. But soccer and also, what was the other sport? Lacrosse, I was a goalie. So I know what you mean about, but that has more to do with just a kinetic body, experience in the body. It also has to do with other perceptions. It's a whole series of processes taking place. If I just think about it in terms of being a goalie in lacrosse, because I wasn't in hockey, and your orientation to the net and that kinetic body movement, and it makes sense. But there's other processes and perceptions and areas of the brain that are involved in all of that. So, um, can two people with BPD really have a romantic relationship? I would say no. Um, I'm diagnosed, but I'm very certain my ex also has BPD. However, I read that BPD couples are very uncommon. Is that true? Well, I don't know that it's so uncommon because when I had BPD, I was with somebody who had quad BPD. And we had a childish relationship. So I don't say everybody else would have that. So we tried to have a romantic relationship, and some of the aspects of what that means happened, but it wasn't healthy. And we were, how can I put it? She was very emotionally unavailable, and that would get me very angry. And then, so I'd be angry. And then there was something she was experiencing from me, and it was like, not always open yelling, screaming, but it was constant conflict around these issues, is what I remember from that relationship. So I think really it's not that you couldn't have a romantic relationship with two people with BPD. It's not like it's super rare or anything, but it's not going to be healthy, and it's likely going to run into difficulty, and likely not going to work out the best. So I'll put it that way. Um, Ali, thank you, AJ. I'm definitely going to look at that video. Oh, cool. Out to sea. I don't know why I always stumble over that. I would hate to be with someone as emotionally unstable as me. Well, the statement suggests that you're very self-aware, and awareness is half the battle. So I really hope that you're in therapy, or will get in therapy and keep working, or start working, or keep working towards getting more emotionally stable, because it can really happen in and through therapy, and you deserve that. But that's self-awareness right there, awareness of something to do with your emotional, as you said, instability. So that just says maybe you are in therapy, but that just says you definitely have an awareness that really could help you, like, to grow forward in therapy with. So anyway, with that, I think I should get going because, yeah, I let this one go real long. So I've been trying not to do that, but what the heck, every once in a while, I create a rule, I gotta break the rule. Because it's not really a hard fast rule. So, but 3 hours and a half and counting. So, but thank you everybody for coming. Thanks for everything everybody shared. I think it was I think it was a really interesting stream to be part of. And I hope that people feel the same way. And I hope that people that watch parts, or if anybody watches the whole thing, God bless them. I hope it's helpful to people, yeah, when it's up, after YouTube takes a good 24 hours to process it. That's why I'm not using my phone anymore, because that one didn't make it from my phone to YouTube at all. That one live stream just went kaput. I wasn't happy about that. And Allie, I have to go. Yeah, me too. But I love this stream. It was great. Thanks again, AJ. Good night, and everyone else. Yeah, take care, Allie. Hope to see you again. Robert, good night, AJ. Thanks for hearing out my ideas. Oh, they were great, Robert. I always love to hear ideas. And adding your brilliant critical thinking. Educational. Well, I'm glad. And I'm actually going to go and look into that a little bit more, what you spoke about, because I'm not an expert on everything for sure. And I love to learn. Tanya, AJ, I'm just so surprised you didn't recognize the BPD in your ex. Do you mean my like most recent ex? I know. It's like, it's incredible, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But I think in one video I talked about it, and what I came up with it kind of like as I talked about it there to help other people, right? And to give my perspective as somebody who knows what it's like to be on the other side of, like I had a relationship with BPD, NPD, and two quiet borderlines, like way ages apart, and healthy relationships in the middle. Nice healthy relationship now. But yeah, I think it's because we didn't live together, and sometimes it was good, and sometimes she just was like she'd disappear. And there was some conflict once in a while, but it wasn't outward, it wasn't obvious. It was like something's going on. But the key thing that I realized in talking about it the day I just turned the camera on, and I didn't know what I was going to say, I had an idea, but I actually surprised myself because I realized in the middle of the video, and I said, like, I wasn't having a codependent response to her. So I was like, when she would be, probably triggered or pissed off, but internalizing it all, I wouldn't see it, and she'd send the odd weird text, well, often, and or she'd cancel plans and whatever. I would just go on with my business, and I think that's why I didn't really pick it up, because I didn't really think about it like a lot. I was like, that's weird, or I wonder if she's going to make it to this or that, or I wonder if we'll get to do this, but I didn't really over focus on it. That's the only explanation I have right now anyway. But obviously there was a lot going on for her because she knows what I do, etc. And yeah, I would never, and I don't know how I got, I take responsibility. I'm not going to say she fooled me. I mean, I feel fooled, but I mean, I don't know why I didn't see it. I would just say because things weren't that contentious or anything, and when she would be doing her withdrawals, that like distancing, I didn't take it like silent treatment. I'm busy. I have other things to do. So that's the only explanation I have right now, actually. But it can happen, because it doesn't matter what you know or what you do, professionally or whatever. When you're in a relationship with somebody, it can be very different. So I think that's the best I can offer. Oh, you're welcome. Out to sea and Mola Girl and Tanya. And thank you. You said you can understand that. Yeah. Well, and you said you were doing your own thing. Yeah, I was. And the good news about that I discovered in making the video, I'll just end with here, is I wasn't responding codependently. I wasn't like chasing after going like, what's the matter? What's wrong? I just didn't think. And it might sound like I'm insensitive, but I'm not insensitive. I'm just like, okay. She would take off and she would say something, or sometimes she'd take off in the middle of something, and I'd be like, okay. Because I left her with her responsibility for herself, and I was taking responsibility for myself. And yeah, it just wasn't obvious. So. Anyway, I hope that helps. I'm still working that out, but I think that's probably about as far as I'm going to get to it on that point, in general. So everybody take care, and if anybody isn't subscribed, please subscribe, hit the notification bell. Love to see you again on another live stream. And yeah, so take care. I'm going to find my way out of here now. It's just about remembering the sequence of button pushing because YouTube is finicky. Everybody take care and realize that the comments on this stream and the stream itself, I'm not going to private it or anything, but it may not appear for quite a while because YouTube is slow and I don't know why, but backlog of processing these live streams for sure. So everybody take care.